Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, Asar Imhotep, and this is an open forum. And just waiting for a few more folks to get in. If you are on YouTube, the link to join the conversation is posted and pinned to the very top of the chat. So if you want to come in and ask directly some questions or make a comment about, whatever's on your mind, we can get it in now. So probably in about 4 more minutes, we'll get started. All right, peace. Peace and blessings, everyone. Once again, this is your brother Asar M. Hotep, and this is an open forum where whatever's kind of on your mind, regarding relevant stuff, we take a stab at it, and see if we can come to some common ground on some things. Give y'all any kind of latest updates on whatever, and y'all let me know what's happening in these internet streets. And beforehand, just want to again thank everyone for joining the conversation, and especially those who have made themselves known in the chat. So I want to acknowledge Edward Nigma 9x9, Sister Tamika 1, X_G is in the building. Brother Chevron Elanto L is in the building. Living in Truth, Prophetess Keys Truth is in the building. Thank you for joining us. And Mulamu Ra X is in the building, as well as Brother Robert Rand and Teti Ursamaat Ra Seneferu is in the building. Thank you all for joining this conversation today. And as I stated, this is an open forum. And so if you would like to join the panel and, to be involved in the dialogue, the link is pinned to the top of the YouTube chat. So you just click in there and then you're ready to go. And let me see. And peace to Keith. I don't know if this is Sane or Sane. Hopefully you can correct me on the proper pronunciation of the last name, but welcome to the Mbongi, and thank you for joining us. And so I guess we can get started. So firstly, I just want to say that I'm not on my normal computer, so I don't even know how I sound since I'm with these kind of cheap headphones. I'm on the phone. I'm using the phone version of StreamYard. So I'm kind of limited in what I can do and how fast I can do it. So I do apologize beforehand if there is any kind of, how should I say, technical difficulties that may arise as a result of me using this other device. But I am in the midst of traveling. I'm kind of parked right now. I just finished getting some gas, and so we doing this in the car edition. Anyway, let me see. And Teti Ursma Ra says, everybody's still talking about what's the color of the Egyptians. Nothing new. Of course, that's why, I have taken a break, so to speak, from the conversations that have, been transpiring, because, the folks having the conversations aren't necessarily kind of deep researchers in the subject. So it's just going to kind of cycle the same information over and over again without going through the rigors necessarily to answer the question. And so I'm not even sure. Well, I know why the conversation is still going on, because of course people can't get enough of it. But this is a question that I have been dealing with my entire adult life, and I will be 44 years of age, hopefully, God willing, come July. And so you can imagine from at minimum 18 to 44 that that is always going to be the subject, which is part of the reason why I have taking the time instead of just having internet conversations to write a book or begin the process of writing a series of books dedicated to that very topic. And so the book that is going to come out in August 22nd, 2023 is Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards a Meaning of the Place Named Kemet. And so for me, the whole Kemet debate came as a result of the larger conversation on the origins of the ancient Egyptians and what quote unquote race were they. And so especially in the late 90s, the Kemet part of the conversation was a big part of the debate on the race of the ancient Egyptians. And so, based upon this 20 plus years of research and these intense conversations with both laypersons and academics alike, it was only fitting that, I try to create a series of texts that address the major issues that I've repeatedly come across, over the years. So, in short, you gotta be able to frame the conversation correctly. You got to be able to ask the right questions, define terms accurately, because you have to answer the question, well, what is an ancient Egyptian? Is an ancient Egyptian unto itself a race? Or is it simply an identification for those who are born in ancient Egypt during ancient Egyptian times and who speak the language or, practice particular cultural aspects, like in terms of death and marriage, funerary rites, et cetera, et cetera? What are the criteria that you are sticking with in order to define what an ancient Egyptian is? And so can somebody be an Egyptian who was born in another country but has migrated and settled in, and then their children was born on, Egyptian soil, right? And if they come from a variety of different areas which have historically developed certain types of phenotypes, what does that do to the overall makeup over time when it regards to ancient Egyptians? If, for example, you're arguing that the ancient Egyptians initially were black, then how do you explain the lighter color over time? And if you argue that the lighter color was the main color, then how do you explain the foreign descriptions of the ancient Egyptians, as well as their own depictions on the walls and papyri, with the normal variations of quote unquote black skin, facial features and hair textures, right? All of these things have to be addressed in a very systematic and academic way. And thus far, too many of us in this community have not, put it to paper, made sense, and made it their priority. They're satisfied with just having barbershop discussions about the subject. And of course you get, after 20 years involved in the same conversation, you get tired of the conversation into itself, especially with a number of individuals who aren't serious about the deeper studies and the proper way to frame research questions and executing, you know, and diving into the research process to answer these particular types of questions. And so, hopefully we can change that, the nature and the quality of the conversation with the publication of these particular books, these volumes that will be published. So the first one is going to be Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards an Etymology of the Place Name Kemet. That will be released on August the 22nd. And you can currently get your copy or pre-sale. You can purchase pre-sale at asarmhotep.com. The link is below. And the book will be $40 or $45 when it comes out in August. But for the month of May, and you only have a few days left, you can get it for $25. And so when you go through the checkout process, right when it gets to payment method, you're going to see an area that says, enter the coupon code. And then you're going to type the name of this very show, Mbongi, Mbongi. That is M as in Mary, B as in boy, O as in orange juice, right? E, N as in Nancy, G as in Gerald, and then I as in iPad, Mbongi, right? So you're going to type in the words Mbongi, which is the name of the show, in the coupon code area, and it's going to take $15 off. Now, after the last day of May, there will still be a discount, but now the price is going to raise to $30. So you can get it for $25 now. But if you choose to get the pre-sale in June, it's going to be $30. But if you wait until July, it's going to be $35. So it would be in your best interest, if you're interested in this conversation, to purchase your pre-sale in as early as possible. And you will get a sample chapter. There's an appendix E, the word Kemet and the Garden of Eden, and you'll get that sample chapter as a result of your support for the pre-selling of the text, to kind of hold you down until August 22nd when I start mailing off the text. So I hope we can advance the conversation as a result of these publications. And then in volume 2, it's actually going to be an edited work. So there's going to be other scholars that will be contributing to the text, and we'll be dealing with certain aspects of the race and identity of ancient Egypt. And then volume 3 is going to be a text that is going to be a reference text that is going to have all the primary source material that describe or give some very pertinent and key information regarding the nature of ancient Egyptian society, how foreigners described its people, how they described themselves, etc., in their original languages. So if it was written in French, because some French people came into Egypt and saw some folks, we'll have the French primary source and then an English translation. If it was written in Greek, you would have the primary Greek source and then the English translation. And then also, if it, of course, is written in the ancient Egyptian, you'll have the hieroglyphs. You will also have the transliteration as well as the translation of the particular text, and in English, of course. So, and I'm thinking about, and more than likely this will be the case. I wish I would have uploaded this freaking flyer, but I'm on this phone and I don't want to mess up anything. But if on June the 10th, I will be in Cleveland, Ohio, and I will be doing a lecture workshop um, titled, The Importance of Kemet to the Cultural Unity of Africa, subtitled Why Kevin Hart is Right. And so that'll be like a good 2 or 3 hour lecture. And so, hit me up if you want more information. Unfortunately, I don't have the flyer with me here. I probably do though. Let me double check. And but anyway, you can um, hit me up here, and I'll be able to. I do have a copy, so I'm trying to upload it now so I can show the flyer itself. So, but again, to purchase the book, hit me up at asarmhotep.com and go to shop, and you can start the process there. But here is the flyer for those of you who are in Cleveland, Ohio, and surrounding areas. And so I can't even see because it's so small on my phone the other gentleman's name. So it's a 2-day weekend or a 2-day event. So Saturday, June the 10th, for which I'll be speaking, and then the Sunday, the 11th, there will be another gentleman, and y'all be able to see it better than me. I do apologize early. Again, I'm on my phone for this conversation, and it's not letting me see much of anything, or I'm just getting old and just can't see the super small ass text. But anyway, bringing this up because, as I was putting together the lecture and the slides for this, I just realized that there doesn't exist a book that properly links, the cultural the cultural unity, in terms of ideas and concepts in a very systematic way. You have stuff that deals with stuff kind of every now and then, kind of some, broader superficial stuff, but I mean like concrete links in terms of images, in terms of, oral traditions that have been recorded and the like, that really kind of makes these particular arguments. So right now, tentatively there may be a volume 4 to the race and identity in ancient Egypt. And volume 4 will deal with the cultural unity of Africa, or the role of Kemet in the cultural unity of Africa. That'll be the subtitle, of that particular text. So let me go back to the comments here, and let me see. He said like white and Indian South African settlers, exactly. And matter of fact, I was just watching a video yesterday about the colored group in South Africa. And so it's so much mixing that was going on there that the offspring of those quote unquote intermixtures is now fundamentally a new race in South African, racial categorizations and the like. They call them coloreds. And so maybe somebody, if somebody's checking us out live from South Africa, can give us some boots on the ground details and an explanation of how all of that works there. But it was interesting. But it is basically just like that. So you're seeing a lighter skin population develop in South Africa as a result of the Dutch invasions, the British invasions, the immigrations of the Indians, and just the quote unquote natural African integration and mixtures with, the Bantu Nguni speakers who had traveled from East and Central Africa to the South, and the so-called Khoisan folks who are also in South Africa. So it brings a kind of a unique genetic mix in South Africa, and that's exactly what you see in Egypt even to this day. So, and remember, folks who are listening, this is an open forum, so you can join the conversation, and by clicking the link that is pinned to the top of the chat in the YouTube space. So we should be getting folks from Facebook as well as YouTube. So if you're on Facebook, you're going to have to come to the YouTube channel and then click the link in order to join. And so, and peace to the Chronicles of Gameology. Thank you for joining us. He says, peace and blessings, Asar. With the Pentagon and the U.S. government openly investigating the UFOs, does this solidify the claims that the subject that UFOs held their ancestor Credo Mutwa made in his book? I'm not sure. And the way that you worded it seems that they are investigating, but according to your statement, you didn't say that they actually found UFOs. So the interest of searching for UFOs is not the same as the claims that, you know, the late Baba Credo Mutwa made in terms of conversations regarding the presence and interactions of UFOs with humans in his lifetime. So I would have to know, you know, a little bit more about the nature of the investigations, and if they claim that they have discovered, you know, UFOs and what that is. But at current, I have no idea what's going on in that space. But I do appreciate your question. Let's see. And thank you, Sister Mika. If you want to purchase, there's the direct link to the book, and then she has the word Mbongi. You don't put all that. That's kind of the way that the chat has it is kind of all bunched together. But the word Mbongi itself, not Mbongi purchase, will grant you the discount if you purchase. So thank you, Sister Mika, for the reminder. And Bina Bong, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, they ask, are you familiar with the archaeological site Doki Gel in the Sudan? I don't know if it's Doki Gel or Doki Gel. If so, can you speak on its relationship with Kemet? I'm not familiar with the site and its details. But it's interesting that I'm preparing for the lecture in Ohio and putting together the slide presentation. I'm going to incorporate a number of videos, and I'm going to show some artifacts, some living culture facts, as what we call it, in the Sudan in the present day that is reminiscent of culture facts that you find in ancient Egypt, but they're also found in Ghana. And what's interesting about this one video that I saw, I already was able to link what I saw in Ghana with ancient Egypt, because even the present day formation of it agrees with some older archaeological stuff that was found in Ghana. But someone in the comments said that they thought that these people were a group of Nubians in the Sudan to this date, because they still have the same artifacts and they do the same dance moves, it's the same ceremonial dance. And so I went and investigated based off that comment, and I found them. And sure enough, there's that connection. And so there's a lot of data to demonstrate that a lot of folks in Ghana, in Togo, in Benin, in modern day Nigeria, are originally from the Sudan, East Africa, and and this helps to add more evidence to that argument, right? So, I'll be more than I'm very interested in looking at that particular site that you mentioned, and so um, maybe you can kind of guide me into some things that you have come across, and we can go from there. And X_G asks, can you do a Colton Play show sometime? You kind of showed a slide the last forum. I thought I've done one before, but I can do one specifically just on the Colton Play itself. It was part of a larger conversation. So I know I've mentioned him on a number of past conversations in passing, but I have not done a show dedicated to him. So I'm going to take you up on that suggestion, and I'll put something together. So thank you for the request. Ronnie asks, could you explain the role of a ritual and sacrifice in African spirituality in scientific, non-supernatural terms? Well, I can give you the underlying philosophy behind the role of ritual and sacrifice. To argue it from a particular scientific standpoint, it depends on what scientific field that you want to approach the research question from. That will kind of determine how you properly answer that. But the underlying philosophy of ritual, goes back to this notion that what we see in the physical world is more so a reflection of an invisible world, which we kind of translate into English as the spiritual world. And so, in order to affect things in this world, we have to engage in the invisible world. And so rituals, and there's various different kinds. And while there's much commonality, there's also a large variety as well across Africa. And, they all are designed to kind of stir up and to set things in motion in the invisible world so that it can manifest itself in the real, in the quote unquote physical world, right? So the real world for those African wisdom traditions is the spirit world. And then our world is the shadow, the reflection of that. So it's so if you can imagine it in this kind of context. So if let's say that we want to bake a cake, right? And this is just a kind of a crude analogy. In this world, we would find some eggs, we would find some flour, we would have some vanilla extract, a small amount of oil. We would grease a pan, we would start a fire in the oven, et cetera, et cetera. We would mix ingredients and, put a little yeasting agent in there. And, sometime later we have a cake, and then once it cools, we could put some icing on it, right? But from a spiritual standpoint, instead of dealing with the eggs and all of that first, you would go to the atomic world, the quantum world, and you would you would somehow mix the atoms up in a particular configuration so that it would manifest itself in the form of flour, eggs, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to the raw atoms themselves, and then you're combining them in a particular process. And as a result of you dealing directly with the atoms, then you get the byproducts like the eggs, uh, the flour extract, vanilla extract, etc. So that's the best way that I at the moment that I can explain the role and what's going on, or at least the underlying philosophy of what they're doing. Now there's some now in terms of the science of linguistics, a lot of ritual is the result of paronymy going on in ancient times. And so paronymy is the belief that two or more words sound the same must necessarily have a common origin or must be related in some way. And it is because of the similarity in the pronunciation of words in ancient times, because we had a much smaller vocabulary then, they started making these kinds of links. So for example, when you see Africans wearing a leopard skin, right? The word for leopard and cheetah in the mother tongue was pronounced the same way as the word for king or head of household. So as a result of the similarity of the word for cheetah or leopard and the word for king or head of household, kings began wearing the leopard skin. And then other kind of philosophies kind of emerged out of that. But some rituals happen as a result of that. And the idea that sacrifice, that you need to do a sacrifice, is because in the mother tongue language, there was a word for to kill, to slaughter, to cut. And then there was also a word for purity and also a word for blood and fire. And all of these words sounded very similarly. And as a result of all of these separate words sounding the same or similarly in the mother culture, our ancient ancestors believed that, by sacrificing and spilling the blood of a particular animal or something to this nature automatically cleansed you or cleansed your circumstance. And this was by sacrificing the animal, this was your entryway into that quantum or spiritual world that I had mentioned earlier. So it's, to ask about the scientific aspect of that, that's a totally different question. And that's assuming that the rites and rituals and the underlying philosophy is in fact correct and an accurate reflection of reality. And so, you first must address it from a cultural, socio-linguistic aspect first. And then from there, you can get, into the areas in which you want. But that's a very good question. I appreciate it. Here we go. I'm just now seeing the second part to your question. So it says, for instance, what does it mean when a person has a shrine to Shango, makes a sacrifice to Shango, and lets Shango's spirit guide him or her? Again, you have to deal with the underlying philosophy and the culture of the people, because some folks believe that Shango is an entity that you could communicate with in the same way that you and I are communicating now, or two human beings would communicate in person, right? So the idea of a Shango may have just been a personification of a particular aspect of nature, a force of nature, or just a cultural or conceptual idea like Ma'at, is a cultural conceptual idea that was later personified for the purpose of transmitting this particular value for which Ma'at, the goddess Ma'at in ancient Egypt, represents, right? And so from there, you know, as time progresses, the line between the conceptualization of deity and the people's perception of the reality of deity, the lines become blurred. And so they view the deity as an actual entity for which you can converse and have an intellectual conversation and make requests and all of that. And so, you know, we treat the idea of deity and force the same way that we conceptualize and view other human beings. And so we do to the spirit world what we would do with each other. And so we sacrifice, we would feed it, you know, we would try to appease it so that it can use its insight and powers to work on our behalf. He says, could you also explain the role of spirituality, voodoo, and the Haitian Revolution? How did it help them accomplish their goals? That's a whole conversation. And I'd rather have somebody who specializes in the Haitian Revolution and Haitian culture come and have that conversation with us. And so that's another video that I can another show that I can plan for the future. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, Sister Mika, again for the reminder and the link. And Walamura X and asks, what are your thoughts on the mouse utopian experiment? I think it could give some insight into what would have happened in ancient Kemet with the original population. I'm not familiar with that experiment. And so, you know, we're gonna have to definitely show me, give me a link so I can view it, or if there's a video conversation about it, and or if there's a paper that I could read about it. That looks interesting. And learn together with Obama says, in thousands of years from now, people will forget what is happening in South Africa, and there will be debates like today on Kemet. Exactly. Which is why, you know, unlike the Comatians, you know, we're going to have to document our history in a very detailed and precise way so that people in the future will understand, like, nope, these people, the original people are not native here, but they've had offspring, and the offspring created, you know, they were forced to create their own group, and they were intermixing, and, you know, this is how the population is today. And so even in the United States, you know, the National Geographic has, you know, put out an issue of National Geographic, which talks about that, you know, basically, you know, most black folks are going to be looking like Beyonce, you know, or some very, you know, or a shade darker in the future, you know, as more mixing happens here in the United States. Living in Truth asks, this is, what do you think about the two Netflix documentaries, Cleopatra and Queen Nzinga? I don't have Netflix, and I haven't seen neither one of the series. And, you know, and so I have this thing with Netflix. I just usually wait till the end of the year, and then I'll get Netflix for 30 days, and then I'll just kind of binge watch everything. Because when I had Netflix, I would just be, you know, searching for days to find something to watch in between the one show that I wanted to watch, what made me get a subscription in the first place. But I haven't seen them, and I'm not too fond to see the Cleopatra one. Queen Nzinga, I want to see what they did with it, but Cleopatra, I'm like, I'm, you know, just as a subject matter, Cleopatra's just not that interesting for me, you know, in terms of dealing with ancient Egyptian history. And let's see. And Rich, the African elder, says about Ghani family and Zurisana got in late, better than never. So welcome and thank you for joining the conversation. Sister Cavalin Mine is in the building. West Coast is in the building. She's not active in the chat, but tuned in. Peace, African family. Peace to you as well, sister. And Keith Sane or Sane says, are the Mandingos of Mali related to the Dinka of Sudan? I don't know. That's a good ass question, and I could see with the names where you're getting that from, and this is something that I've been kind of loosely investigating ever since Diop had put that notion out, linking the names of clans and families in Sudan with clans and families in Senegambia and Senegal and those areas. And so I just haven't had enough time to really just focus on that. But I've always wanted to explore, because he did a good preliminary investigation into this. And to my knowledge, unless there's some French work at the University of Cheikh Anta Diop that furthers that conversation. If there is, I haven't come across it, but to my knowledge, to this date, I haven't seen anyone jump on that and do a further investigation. And so that would definitely be interesting. And Stephen McKenzie, peace and blessings to you, family. And Rich the African Elder says, when reading of Water and the Spirit, did you see the relationship in ritual and cosmology with the Yoruba and Ifa tradition? There was many points of similarity in that, but surprisingly, there are some aspects of that conversation from the late Dr. Malidoma Somé that really kind of resonated with me in terms of ancient Kemet itself. And so, the Daguerre have been on my radar when I'm investigating, these commonalities between African peoples. But yeah, Water and the Spirit is a serious work. And Smash Rockwell is in the building. Peace and blessings. And I don't know what's happening. And I do apologize, people. I'm on this phone, so I may be slow in reacting into some things. And Sister Mika, I remind you to ask your questions in the chat or hit the link that is pinned up at the top. And, while you are doing that, you can also, that's if I'm able to find the dang clip, for you to That is right. Make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe. So let me see. Okay, here we go. It says, knowing Walama Ra'ax, ancient Kemet environment wasn't nearly as convenient enough for the mouse utopian experiment to take effect. All right. Also, to add to the ritual conversation, a lot of ritual is psychological. I think priests understand and exploit the placebo effect. I had a conversation on this channel about that. And matter of fact, I cited Credo Mutwa himself when he talks about, like that's a conversation that just really needs to happen, because when you've made it to a priestly level, a lot of stuff that we're just thinking is kind of spooky and supernatural is really just the culture of you have to understand African pedagogy and teaching methods, right? Like they have to go through rituals and rites and the socialization process and all of that to kind of teach you the underlying things. But then, it's understood on a very fundamental and simple level when you get to the priest level. And that's always very interesting. Um, and you see, no, just hit that. And I don't see any more questions. Again, if you want to join the panel, the link is pinned in the chat on YouTube. For those who are viewing on YouTube, I mean, for those of you who are viewing on Facebook, you have to come to the YouTube and click the link that is pinned to the top in the chat to join the conversation here. And peace and blessings to Che, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And thanks, Sister Mika, again, to remind folks to thumb up the video and subscribe if you have not subscribed. And, just to kind of recap, a little earlier, the book Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt is on pre-sale right now. And to get to solidify your copy, and at the discount rate right now, which is $25, the regular price is $40. It may be $45 by the time we get to August 22nd when the book will be released. So I would encourage everyone to pre-sale now. And so, just visit the link, asarimhotep.com, and go to the shop link, and you can purchase the book. And if you type in the word Mbongi, which is the name of this show, so if you don't know how to spell the word Mbongi, that is Mbongi on the top right corner. So if you want the book, type in the word Mbongi in the checkout. When you're getting ready to select, it's going to say PayPal, then it's going to say coupon code. And so let me see if there's anything else in the comments. He says, reading your new PDF book, Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, your reference to Kemet, meaning land, reminds me a place in Igbo called Alaji, Ala Oji, meaning fertile land. That's interesting. So I know Allah means land and earth in Igbo. I don't know what Oji in Igbo means, but I do know, however, that if like Oji or Gigi in Yoruba, there's a word that kind of means darkness or shadow. So I don't know if that is from the same particular concept. But I would like to hear your breakdown of the word itself. So yeah, exactly. So he says that OG means black in Igbo. So yeah, so it's black land, it's fertile land, and so yeah. So as a matter of fact, like in Yoruba, they have Iboji, which kind of describes the underworld, the place of the shadow. So that same OG is kind of built from the same root that gives you juju or jual in Yoruba as well. And so I discussed that in the upcoming book. So you in the chapter that you were reading, it's not discussed there. Actually, it might be. Matter of fact, there should be in Appendix E. There should be a little section where I talk about Iboji and the like. But I'm adding a section in there because I'm gonna be dealing with a lot of times you'll see a lot of folks who are trying to use the images of like a black Osiris or the black Mentu Hotep or the black, like the pitch black, Nefertari, Amose Nefertari, and trying to use that, and check out the Diop has used that as well as other African scholars to quote unquote prove that the ancient Egyptians were dark black Africans, and that's not the case. Those representations are not the individual themselves while they were living. Those represent the deceased. Like there's a version of Tutankhamun. That represents his ka, and his ka is that OG that you cited here, right? Because there's variants of this word that word for black that is used for shadow, the shadow of a person. And so the shadow of yourself, your ka, is pitch black. And so when you see Mose Nefertari or King Tut or Mentu Hotep in their real life depictions, they have the dark reddish brown skin, like most Africans in that region, especially in Upper Egypt and Nubia. But they also have the pitch black representations, and those are the Ka. And we can demonstrate this very easily, and so I'm adding that into the text right now. Let's see. I think a part of understanding African spirituality is to be able to decompartmentalize and amalgamate various disciplines and sciences taught here in the West. I would agree. And learn together says, according to your meaning of Kemet as field, I could suggest words of my Bantu languages, P, Ping, and Kuba, all meaning field and plantation. I would be more interested in that word Kuba. And please give me the actual language. And the second comment says, or Kara Kana Kand, meaning city, from Proto-Bantu Kanda. Yep, I include that in the text as well. So you'll see those variations of the word in there as well, and they all have the same meaning. And AC1 says Ka in Igbo means like or twin. You see how should I say paronymy works? And so all of this will come into fruition in the text. And peace to Zane Montego, who's in the building. Thank you for joining us. And I'm trying to see if I missed a comment. And it says, learn together. Beckwell and Ikota from Central Africa. I appreciate it. I'll look into this. And Kevin Lyman says, I'm sure some were dark. Well, you got to understand it from this perspective. For example, there is a researcher, one of the understudies of the late Cheikh Anta Diop, and who now, well, I think it's somebody else now, but for a time, he was running the Egyptology department in Cheikh Anta Diop University in Senegal. His name is Dr. Abubakri Musalam. And, in several of his papers and his PhD dissertation, they're all written in French, and a couple of books that he has, he tries to argue that these pitch black representations of these figures were representative of the collective skin tone of the Egyptians themselves. The problem with his analysis is, again, those representations of these individuals are only associated with the person when they are deceased in terms of their funerary literature. And secondly, when You look at their normal representations of them when they were alive, the skin color is totally different. So it's virtually impossible, especially in them days. I don't know about in modern days. We probably got technology that can make you a whole different race of people, but you're not going from my skin color, as you can see on the screen currently now, to Wesley Snipes' color, or vice versa. Like, Manute Bow's color, and then when then on another day he becomes my color. That doesn't happen. It's something else going on. He says, "Are you saying the majority were reddish brown, black, like a mixed race people? Not necessarily a mixed race people, but they were just brown, reddish skin. That's the color of them. And so I don't know if you've been to Egypt yet, but when you go, that's exactly what you will see when you go into Egypt and go into Nubia and those different parts. The color of that skin is what you see there. And so and I know you personally, so your skin color is what I'm talking about, right? And then of course you would have some that was of darker hue, but I'm speaking in context of certain depictions where the images of these prominent pharaohs are pitch black, like it's midnight black, it's Osiris black, and that's a totally different issue. He says, "Can you post a picture?" And see, I'm on my phone, so I'm not on my laptop or my. Let me see if I have anything stored here. Um, till this date. Let me see if I have anything. Um, Let me see if I have anything on this phone. So give me a second. Pretty sure I have something. Something. Uh, okay, so here. So for example, you see the reddish brown skin tone from these dancers, right? Like this is what these people are depicted as while they're living, right? But when they are deceased, when they're depicting the ka, the spiritual double of the person, that the spiritual double is represented as pitch black. And so you can't use that as a representation, as evidence in an argument that the ancient Egyptians are black. That's a faulty conclusion. It's based off of a non-systematic analysis of the data that is shown. And unfortunately, I don't have because again, I'm on my phone. I'm just looking at what's on my phone, and I got other stuff on my phone. Let me make sure I ain't got no porn on here. I ain't got no porn on here, but just to make sure, you know. So here's a good one, right? So this is King Tut on the left, right? So this is the person's skin tone while he was living, and so this is a young girl. This is a young girl in West Africa on the right hand side, and you can see that she has the same skin complexion as King Tut, and kind of the same and similar look as this bust of King Tut on the left hand side, right? And so this is what I'm talking about in terms of the color. But there's another depiction that I know I don't have. Let me just double check and make sure, because I don't think I have the Ka of King Tut uh, on my phone at all. I ain't got that many images. I mainly got some photos of uh, yeah, I ain't got nothing. Just some pages of some books I've been scanning, but nothing in them thus far. And let's see, this is a black and white kind of image uh, of like, so it's kind of hard to see, but these are a good representation of like the people in the area, the variety of the people in the area. But given that these are kind of monochrome, black and white is not the best representation. But these are some older photos that was taken in the area of Egypt and Sudan in the early 1900s. All right, but this is the best representation that I think. You can kind of see the brown. You can even see it in the sister who's in the back. Like this is the hue that the founding ancient Egyptians were, but they were lighter in color than like your Nuba people, your those tall, dark skinned, you know, um, folks in the Sudan. They're a darker color than these folks here. But in today's racialized society, they're all black. But people get on the internet and want to call the ancient Egyptians everything but black, and that's a different conversation in of itself. And Jagad Davis is in the building. Peace and blessings to you. And Walamu asks, what do you think about Kinkole using Swahili as a base language, Chiluba Chican as classical to replace Arabic and English loan words? I would say, and in terms of a Pan African language, I've always advocated for Kiswahili to be the Pan of the modern Pan African language. Like that's the language that we conduct business in, and you're not going to be able to stop loan words, right? And some of those loan words in Arabic are loan words from Egyptian anyway, so it's really kind of cycled back. But but if someone is just so adamant about replacing the Arabic and English loan words, I'm pretty sure we can find an indigenous Chiluba word to replace it with. That's not a problem. Uh, Sister K. Milan says, okay, she understands now. Indeed. Right. And again, folks, this is an open forum. You can ask questions in the chat, or you can come on and provide any kind of commentary or ask questions live. I won't be too long today. I don't want to have a long show. Uh, but I just wanted to, see what y'all were up to, what was on y'all mind, check the pulse of the streets, these internet streets, as they I am back, and as I can see, I'm in the car. Turn the camera on for a second as I'm leaning back, and I'm actually waiting on an order, but says, what is the importance of indigenous scripts? And peace to Uncovered the Jed. I don't know if I recognize you if you came in earlier. But the the importance just depends on, kind of your perspective. Of course, if you are the inventor of indigenous African scripts, you design them to be able to communicate more broadly and into the future, you know, uh, certain ideas and important information. Now, if you're a scholar, it's just good information in terms of the collection of indigenous writing scripts, you know. But uh, if you are, just kind of in the modern setting as a layperson, and you want to use an indigenous script for, your own purposes, to kind of promote African scripts and use it, that's a totally different thing. That's an exercise in sovereignty and the like. And so I would need a bit more clarity in terms of what you exactly mean in terms of importance. But those are kind of the broad ideas that I believe surround that question. And Vernon King says, in the book Destruction of Black Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams, he mentions a kingdom that united much of Africa in the Congo before Kemet. Is this old punt before they traded with Kemet? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read Dr. Williams' book, and I need to refresh, especially with this ongoing conversation about the race of the ancient Egyptians. So, since the times of Diop, since the times of Chancellor Williams in the 70s, they've been articulating that that ancient Egypt had an influx of migrants as well as invaders over its 3,000 plus year history. And that it started off as an indigenous Black African civilization. And then, of course, as they, took in more women from conquest and soldiers, and they were integrated into the society, and everybody kind of marrying each other and having offspring, a mulatto group and class, kind of like the coloreds in South Africa emerged. And so all of this had been discussed even before DNA was even a topic in African studies, right? And so, people need to revisit that argument. In my personal opinion, Chancellor Williams has argued it the best in terms of what was going on in ancient Egypt, and no one has since, articulated any better than him. But I don't remember exactly what you're talking about and what specific kingdom he's talking about. So I don't know if it's the Bakongo kingdom, if it's the Luba kingdom, there was the Kuba kingdom, but I think a lot of these were more so after Kemet, in terms of their time frame. So I don't know before Kemet, like, what you would mean in that context. And Biana Bong asks, are you familiar with the YouTube channel Mr. Hotep? You consider a collaboration in the area of linguistics. I've just got familiar with him, and I haven't really kind of visited his channel, but I have seen some of his short YouTube clips, and I got familiar with it because people were kept asking me, was I him? And I had to, confirm, disconfirm that is not saying that anything is wrong with much of what he says, but just that Mr. Imhotep is not me, Asar Imhotep. And so I would have to, kind of see, more in terms of the quality of his arguments and the like. But he's been putting some decent work, some very good work, from what I've been able to see. He says he meant in terms of preserving ideograms. And hold on, we got him into the stream. Boom, peace and blessings, brother Sean. P is in the building. Hold on, just 1 second. I'm gonna try to address this one question, and I'm gonna bring you in again. And so he says, I meant in the sense of preserving ideograms and African worldview. Now, in a kind of our modern age, we would have to practicalize, because there's a whole slew of things that you would have to do in terms of not only preserving, but you have to find a use for them. You have to start writing in the script, right? And given that most of us don't write anymore, outside of the signature of your name on some legal documents, you're going to have to create some computer scripts and a keyboard using the ideograms and the like, to be able to utilize. So there's a whole process to kind of modernize these indigenous scripts. Uh, but yeah, I appreciate your comment and the clarification. Um, I'm gonna get back to that question later. This thing kind of skipped, uh, so I just want to go there, and there we go. Just reminding you about the latest book. You can pre-sale. It's on pre-sale now. You can order the pre-sale at a discounted price. The information is in the chat as given by Sister Mika One. Thank you for not only your support, but your reminding people of this very vital information. So, peace and blessings, brother. Sean, what's good?
How you doing, brother Saw?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. I can't complain. I just got done playing some football. Hey, so I missed some of the show. But I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Even though I know the answer to this, but I just wanted to um bring it to your attention. I don't know if you watch Garfield show today?
Today, nah.
Okay.
What was the subject?
All right. So of course, I guess Egypt came up in descriptions and the link to West Africa or whatever. I haven't finished watching the part where Aziz joins in, but there was something that was stated, and they continue to make the same mistake by Ngozi and Gullah, and you know how they try to use linguistics to support genetics or genetic. You know how they confuse it, right? And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't make much sense. But in that, the Table of Nations comes up in the conversation.
Hmm.
And when the Table of Nations comes up in the conversation, of course, Wujawa's name comes up. And Ngozi states that he doesn't believe that the Table of Nations says the Remetch in it, even though we have demonstrated this consistently, right? Everyone
Uh-huh.
has demonstrated this consistently, and it's even in the book.
Yeah. First and foremost, I've been to the tomb twice. I've got photos of the primary. They're my photos. It's not something I snatched off of Google. Even though the Google ones are better than the ones that I got, because by the time that I got there in 2020, Are you there? Peace. Can you hear me? If y'all are in the chat and y'all can hear me, please. I'm gonna try to get in because I do have my laptop in the car, so y'all can hear me. Cool beans. All right, and so I'm gonna try to also log in because again, I'm on my phone and I'm in the car, so y'all can't really. Y'all can see me now, but I don't have my lights with me. So so I'm gonna enter just in case as Brother Sean. Are you still there? Let's see. No, he's. Let's see, mute that over there. Enter studio. Okay. So if Brother Sean, if you can hear me, there we go. And add to the stream. All right, you can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. My bad. Yeah, I'm in the car right now, so I'm
Okay.
not on my normal setting. And so I just pulled out my laptop now, so I don't know how much juice I got on that mug, but so hopefully it will stay this time. But I'm sorry, you were saying that I forgot the last part before I got
Oh
kicked
yeah,
out.
yeah. The Table of Nations doesn't say the Remetch on there.
Oh yeah, that's right. And but yeah, it's well, first of all, it's not a table of nations per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of an area that gives you kind of directions. So like the north is represented by a people, the south is represented by a people, the east and west. Like it's a whole different thing. But the Remetch that it exists. Again, I have been there several times. I've taken photos, and so it is real, and it says Remetch on there. And so if Ngozi can't read Meta Nature, that's on him. That's not even an argument.
Right.
Uh,
Shouldn't
you
be.
know, for it at all. Um, so, but I mean, so what was he trying to? Besides him
Um,
saying that it doesn't mean rematch, did he give an alternative?
no. There's no alternative that could be given outside the fact that he believes that it doesn't say that. I believe that he is under the impression that a lot of the translations are not accurate or meaning certain things. I just think that he's trying to falsify the validity of the work that has been published and put forth before the people by not only you and Wu Jiao and Sinjeti and others, but the whole. I think they're misunderstanding the talking points in regard to West Africa and ancient Egypt and so forth. So um, it's
That would
it's
be a
sad.
weak. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, I was saying it's just sad. It's sad.
Yeah, it's like it's so much stuff out there. Like what people got to remember is that you have a group, and I'm not speaking specifically to them, like to who you just mentioned, but in general, there's just a body of folks that just refuse to do serious scholarship, and they are comfortable with you know going with whatever comes in their mind. And then a lot of folks coming to their mind without doing any due diligence and investigation, and just learning how to screen information and what's solid and what's not, right? And then that's on top of there's just some who argue that what fuels their arguments is essentially um, political, right? Like they don't like a certain somebody or a group of individuals. So I'm just, whatever they're arguing, I'm going to argue the opposite. You know, if we
I got
all if we all agree right now it's 8:54 Eastern Standard Time, they will come and be like, I don't agree with that. I think that's some Afrocentric, BS. That is 8:54, Eastern Standard Time, right now. Like they'll
Mhm.
make those arguments. Then they'll be like, well, in China, it's 12 p.m. I don't know what time it is in China, right? Irrelevant to the conversation. We talking about East Coast time, and they want to talk about time in China, and and it's that's what I'm saying. Like there just comes a point. Like I've been in this racial conversation about ancient Egypt since 96, 97, right? So there may be people that are listening to this that I've been engaged in this conversation longer than they've been born, right? And I've heard damn near everything. And I don't want to say everything because every now and then somebody will just come with something so left field that, you just got to now add that to the pot of craziness in terms of what they argue. But I've damn near heard it all. And we keep getting into these conversations, the recycling conversation, recycling old bad arguments. And so at just some point, you just gotta let people drown in their own ignorance, right? Like you as a historian, as a professional scholar, you write and publish, to the best of your ability and analysis. You engage the community, and then you move on to some other work because they're always like as much evidence that the Earth is round, right? You still got people seriously trying to argue a flat Earth and are serious with it, right? And it's at like I like the debate with Unc and whoever the other person was. Like that's just a waste of goddamn time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just I wouldn't even uh uh validate them, with a serious discussion. Right. It's just some stuff that you can debate is good for YouTube discussions, but it's not good overall. Like, I'm an Africologist, and as an Africologist, we we do scholarship with the intent of improving the lives of African people, working for the freedom of African people. So it's there's political motivations and personal interest in a lot of the research that I do, but at the end of the day, it's all about the liberation of African people. And that to me is just more. I can't waste my time with individuals who just don't have it all upstairs. So you got to remember that a lot of folks that are in these debates didn't do well in school. They have undiagnosed mental health issues. All kinds of issues going on. People that try to change their life around from being gangbangers and thugs, but don't want to leave the streets behind, but want to enter academic conversations and don't want to change their character. It's just like, and everybody has a past, and of course we grow and mature, but you have to grow and mature in the work that you're doing in terms of yourself, and there's a lot of folks that just don't want to grow up, and you just can't. If you're serious about the work that you're doing, You can't waste your time, dealing with folks that don't want to grow up, that don't want to learn, that don't want that wake up in the morning with the intent on misunderstanding and not wanting to understand, information. I know that was a long rant, but
Nah, that was on point.
but anything else been going on?
Nah, I mean, I haven't been really paying too much attention to anything else, but outside the fact that they have been rehashing old arguments, and that seems to be the whole talking point of today. So I know Brother Aziz has been in the battle with them a few times, trying to clear some things up. But what they don't know about West Africa is something significant. Is like the oral traditions and a lot of the evidence that is there that supports Aziz's argument. But I don't think that they understand what he is even saying, and then they can't argue against his evidence that he presents because they're unfamiliar with that evidence.
Yeah, it's as I stated, it's one of those it's one of those situations where um again, it's a maturity, it's a maturity thing. Hold on. Waiting for Perry. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. It's a maturity thing, and and then on top of that, Brother Aziz, he just need to get his feet wet, so he can engage as he learns the process of arguing and the like. So he needs to get his feet wet. But what people don't understand is that they're trying to read stuff about history and things, and then trying to argue with people who live their culture, and know what they have in their own culture. And a lot of these folks don't engage or adopt African cultures and philosophies. They wouldn't understand because they're trying to be quote unquote scientific, but they can't. African culture is like a dance, right? You really can't understand what it is in the corner with a drink in your hand, looking at everybody else participate. It's a participatory thing. You have to get in the dance. You have to get in the movement. Only then will you be able to see why and how things are done. That's why when I speak about African spirituality, it isn't based solely on stuff that I've read. I engage in it as a practitioner of the Isheshe tradition. I can draw on these experiences and know what to look for when I'm engaged in the literary text of ancient Kemet, for example. Right? And this is a lot of stuff that they miss because they won't know because they don't engage in African culture. They ain't been to West Africa. Right? And and it's a shame. And so again, you at some point you're just going to decide, going to have to decide.
You broke up. You back? We can hear you. We don't hear you no more. Some scholars. Who are the scholars? Where's their evidence? Refuted what they call themselves? No. We can't hear you at all, Lasar. Can y'all hear me? Can I be at least heard? He said a peppers, please. We can't hear a song right now, y'all, so hold on. The crystal smoke. Pseudos crystals? Just not a song. Okay, cool.
So, Jen,
I think his laptop might.
I'm on this other computer right now as engineer. Okay. I don't know what's up with my phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We hear you.
All right. So I'm on the laptop as engineer. Normally, when I'm on my phone, I always make sure that I have the laptop up. Hold on, let me pause a second. And there we go. Let me turn that off so y'all don't see any boogers I may have. And mute that. So let me remove engineer real quick. Alrighty. So I saw you was trying to say something, but I think you muted yourself beforehand.
No. I was making sure that they could hear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know what's on. I'm to reevaluate using this phone again. But damn, I forgot the. Yeah, it's you can't refute it. Matter of fact, you know all. Because there were some early Egyptologists who had never been to the tomb, tried to say that it was a fake. That the guy who originally who made the drawings of that part of the tomb, the so-called Table of Nations, they was trying to argue with him, saying that it was that it didn't exist. And again, I've been to the tombs twice, to the Valley of the Kings, Ramesses the third's tomb, and so he said, I ain't gonna hold y'all. He goes to beats and sound like he got ADD. Hey, I wish him well. Says, what is your opinion on the black guy in Atlanta that is purported via genetic evidence to be a direct descendant of Ramesses III? He possibly could. I mean, that's not far. I would have to. I've seen people posting it on my timeline. I just haven't had time to actually go through and read the argument. Because he could be talking about he has the haplogroup of that is believed Ramesses III has, which you can find in parts of Central and Southern Eastern Africa. But it's also possible because, these pharaohs been having, relations and children with foreigners, right? And their descendants could have went into Europe, and then that person could have the mitochondrial DNA of a European who is a direct descendant of Ramesses III. And I'm just throwing possibilities out there. So I would actually have to read and see the particular angle in which he's talking about, because I've seen the post, but I haven't read the article or seen any video, discussing it. Let's see. Because I see he's gonna be ready to get out of the water soon, because them dudes be all over the place. Yeah, again, and unless you're writing books and writing essays and organizing your thoughts, that's all you can really expect on these kind of shows. On this platform, I kind of do things in three ways, right? Either I'm presenting information myself based on my own original research, and there's no one to come on the panel or not or whatnot, so that you can just get the raw, straight information. And then, secondly, I do stuff like this, where anybody can ask questions. We can kind of dialogue and go back and forth. It's kind of like the barbershop. And then, of course, I do the interviews, right, where I bring experts in their field to discuss their latest research and the like, right? And people think that they're going to solve stuff by having 25 people on the panel and everybody trying to make arguments and talk over each other and the like. That's just not how this is done. And you're never going to get it. This is precisely why you're going to keep getting these rehash, old, outdated, unsophisticated arguments, because you're trying to present and make a case on a damn platform with 10 other folks. Y'all don't even get along, and y'all trying to talk and argue over each other, right? And saying silly stuff like, what's your source, right? Not understanding what the point of a source is. A source is to be provided when you're not doing your own primary research, right? So you're informing the public that this isn't my argument, this is so and so's argument, and I either happen to agree with it or not. But it's for scholars, your source isn't about shit. It's about, what does the evidence say? What are you able to demonstrate in terms of the raw data, the raw information itself, or the raw experiments themselves? We can give a rat's ass if so and so said. You're committing a logical fallacy in terms of appeal to authority. And only people who don't do their own research rely on appeal to authority arguments, because they don't know how to critique, scholars. So, after a while, you just get tired of those conversations, because, in academic circles, I don't deal with that kind of stuff. We don't deal with that crap. We could care less who said it. It's about, what does the evidence say? And are you knowledgeable enough to be able to interpret the evidence and or to repeat the experiment? Like on that in the Ramesses the third tomb, right? I can repeat the experiment. I've been there. I've taken photos of the wall itself. I can reduplicate the argument. It's not an argument for me. I don't have to rely on a Google image and a redrawing of anything. I engage the primary source, and I'm adept enough in the Meta Nature that I can read what's on the wall. So I know when it says Ramech next to those dark-skinned Africans, in that tomb. And so if anybody else is trying to argue otherwise, you don't get into arguments with them. You wish them well and let them be on their way. You shush them on in their own and let them have their temper tantrum in the corner somewhere. Let me see. Hold on. You there, Brother Sean?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. And two talking about the 23andMe match to the Hamburger runs.
Oh yeah, I'm here. I was making noise. But
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, what we've been saying is learn how to do the work, and you can substantiate a lot of stuff yourself where you can challenge. And I think that they think that experts aren't supposed to be challenged. That's what that's what the field is for.
Exactly. And it's interesting. Like I'm preparing to do
And
another show on. Uh, yeah, can you hear me? Are you there? Okay. Yeah, I'm getting prepared to do a show on Afroasiatic again, and it's just interesting. Like so this book just came out like earlier this month, or probably the end of last month, right? So this is fresh, 2023, Ancient Egyptian and Afroasiatic. There's a article, there's a chapter in here that argues that based on the comparative method, Semitic and ancient Egyptian are not genetically related, right? And then there's another article in here that they're still vying for and arguing that there's an Afroasiatic. So, but there's differing opinions in this particular book. And like the last chapter says that the Chadic languages are not Afroasiatic. And so, when you're reading this stuff, you have to wonder, like, to what extent is is there an Afroasiatic? Because if you can't substantiate a relationship between ancient Egyptian and Semitic, and Chadic languages are not Afroasiatic, then Afroasiatic would only consist of Berber. But you can't establish a genetic relationship with Berber and ancient Egyptian either, right? And I'm a quote all of the issues and stuff here. Like there's this one chapter I'm trying to find is ancient Egyptian and Semitic or Proto-Semitic. It's kind of hard to read, and I guess we turn on the light in the dang car. Keep forgetting I have a light. Um, where is you go? I guess I could go to the table of contents, but that just seems too much like right. And who has time to be right at this moment? I just want to flip the pages and bam, I'm in the chapter that I want. But this is an interesting read. What as soon as I find, here we go, Proto-Semitic and Egyptian. So, peep this out. So, chapter 5, Proto-Semitic and Egyptian by John Hunegard, right? So, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from the.
You still there, so? I think you kind of went out. This is gonna be dangerous right here. Ancient Egyptian and Afro-Asiatic rethinking the origins. Can't wait for this. But we can't hear you at all, that's all.
Maybe if hold on. Hold on. There we go. I'm sorry. The phone mic was interrupting or interfering, I should say, with the. But can you hear me now?
Yeah, you crystal clear.
Hello?
You crystal clear.
Are you there, Sean?
Yep, I'm
Y'all
here.
hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Yes, we hear you. I can hear you. You can't hear me, but I can hear you.
Okay, my bad. I had it the computer on mute.
Okay.
Okay, my bad. So yes. So I don't know how much of what y'all you heard me saying, but again, ancient Egyptian and Afro-Asiatic. So this book just came out this year, this month to be exact. This book is about $135, and so there's a chapter, Proto-Semitic and Egyptian, John Hunegard. I'm gonna start reading from pages 139 to 140. Right? He says, I studied Middle Egyptian for several years in graduate school, and I have taught it I've taught it a few times in graduate seminars, but obviously I am far from being an expert in Egyptian grammar. Quite early in my teaching career, I have also studied some Berber and Cushitic, hoping to gain a better understanding of early Semitic through a better understanding of its genetic siblings. But I ultimately grew frustrated in that enterprise. The dearth of clear cognate sets made it difficult, meaning the small amount of clear cognate sets made it difficult to apply the comparative method, either to reconstruct much of earlier ancestral Afroasiatic with any confidence, or to sort out the interrelationships of its alleged descended branches. And no approach, now going to page 140, and no approach other than the standard comparative method can achieve reliable results toward those goals. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So he continues, my frustration in working on Afroasiatic was brought into sharp focus one semester 25 or 30 years ago, when my late Harvard colleague Calvert Watkins, the eminent Indo-Europeanist, asked me to present the status quo on Afroasiatic to the graduate seminar on historical linguistics. At the end of my 2 or 3 hour presentation, Watkins' first comment was something like this. So, not really an established family then. Talking about Afroasiatic. End quote. And I believe he was right, in the sense that there was still a long way to go to elicit significant numbers of plausible cognate sets across the branches and to formulate consistent sound correspondences on the basis of those cognates, the most fundamental goals of the comparative method. And I also believe that is still true today. So as of May 2023, when this book was released, he still believes that Afroasiatic is not a genetic unit. And this was brought to him in after his presentation on Afroasiatic about 30 years ago. So 30 years ago would have been 1993. This is the same year that Theophilo Benga published his book where he proposed Negro Egyptian as a language family, because the evidence presented for Afroasiatic and related languages was not adequate enough. And so he considered Afroasiatic a fraud. And so this Indo-Europeanist, and they required a comparative method when dealing with Indo-European. He informed the author that after his presentation that this is not a genetic family, so it's not a real thing. And so he had to conclude 30 years ago, and even in 2023, that it is not a genetic unit, and they're still working on it, right? And it's this kind of stuff that people be trying to, they think that I'm crazy, that I'm just some wild Afrocentrist who don't know the field and don't know that there's dozens upon dozens of these same arguments. And so when people try to connect and say that the Egyptians and these people are connected. These folks ain't connected in the damn Middle East, and with Berbers and all this other kind of stuff. These are the results of invasions and adoptions and of African languages and breaking off into certain dialects and the like, right? And this is the kind of stuff, again, they're not purchasing books like this. And you can't say that this is fringe. It was a whole conference. This was based on a conference that was held way back in like 2017, 2018. Right? So this is the proceedings of the conference. Rethinking the origins, trying to see where's the place of Egyptian in Afro-Asiatic. And so someone says, damn, that book is high. Exactly. I paid $135 plus for this book. So this is a hardcover book. But see, people don't, when I be making my arguments and stuff, like, people don't understand these high ass purchases for these books. And why I buy these scholarly texts that you can't find in Barnes and Noble. Right? So it's they need to put some respect on our name when we're making these arguments. We're not talking out our ass. And I don't know why that. There we go. And so yeah. See, I don't see any other comments. I need to clean. Where is? There we go. Comments. Did I miss any comments?
When you say you're gonna be presenting,
what'd you say?
when will you be doing that presentation?
I don't know yet. I'm doing it in conjunction with because I submitted a journal article and it was rejected. That's common. Everybody who's submitted journal articles have gotten their stuff rejected. But the reason why they're rejecting it is not they can't argue against my argument, right? So they try to get around it by saying that, for example, I can't compare Bantu or Yoruba with ancient Egyptian because they belong to two different language phylums. And I have to go back to these source materials and show them that Afro-Asiatic doesn't exist. You can't counter my argument with an argument that has never been substantiated. And so I have all kinds of source material. So when I reply back to the journal, so now I'm going to have to cite all this material and show them and dare them to show me where all these scholars are wrong on this issue here. And another thing, like that, there was a point, and I'm gonna show this in the presentation. There was another part that was shown, that was written in one of the replies, saying that I don't believe these are cognates because these words don't look alike. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? Like, so what ended up happening, and I can tell, is that whoever they sent my my journal article to was not a historical comparative linguist. They sent it to a kind of just a regular Egyptologist, because all of the points that the person was saying goes against the very standards of historical comparative linguistics.
and it was just like superficial stuff that like I don't know if it's a he or she because these were anonymous reviewers, but they reply as one. So when they send a reply, it's just written as one document. But their arguments was just way off, and it's just easy to debunk. But that's just the things. Like now, I would have to write. See, this is one of the reasons why I'm writing the book in the first place, because there's so many layers and things that you have to argue and debunk in the process of making the regular main argument. Because you have these Africanists who deal with African languages who just made up their own thing, and all of the world calls them pseudo, but people in our community think that these people are actual scholars or bona fide legit scholars in this realm, and that they know what they're doing. And that's the sad part, which is why it's like you can't debate with folks who don't know what they don't know. So it's within that context that I'm going to have the discussion. So I'm going to show just some more latest work on this whole Afro-Asiatic thing, showing that, you know, there's no such thing as a consensus when it comes to these language files. They're all pseudo. And scholars have been saying this for decades. African scholars, non-African scholars. But so I don't know when that's coming up. I don't know an exact date. So I'm working on it.
No problem. We'll be ready for it. That'll be a good one. Especially with the compilation of data that has already been presented on this particular argument, and to come back and update it in 2023, that's different. That's doubling down.
Still the same argument. Exactly.
Right.
It's ridiculous. So like, this is what I'm trying to get people to understand, that I'm trying to bring, one of my goals is to help the layperson understand what goes on in academia. That there's a lot of stuff that y'all think are solid that is not solid. And that a lot of this stuff is political and racist. And if you don't have the skill set to be able to comb through the data and to analyze arguments, you know, you'll get lost in the sauce. And your only recourse is to say, well, so-and-so has a PhD. And so I'm just going to go with the PhD who makes this argument. But they totally skip over the other PhDs that make a different argument. You know, so it's, and of course I expect this, and I'm going to show like some screenshots that I was in a conversation that Dr. Capochichi and I were having some years ago when I submitted another article to another journal. And he was talking about they're going to reject it because this other journal, they have a particular school. They're governed by a group that has a particular school of thought, and anything outside of that school of thought, they'll just reject it outright. And I understand this, and this is what I anticipated, because I want the written response. So when I show the public why they're rejecting African scholars, they can see the political nature of this, and they don't want to admit to their own shortcomings. Because they don't want to be the ones, like, if they were to publish my journal article, it would totally defeat everything that they published prior. because they're trying to argue, for example, Afroasiatic. Well, if I'm showing consistent sound meaning correspondences between Yoruba and Chiluba and ancient Egyptian, but you can't do that according to your own text, ancient Egyptian and Afroasiatic, for example, between Semitic and Egyptian, or Egyptian and Berber, or Egyptian and Chadic may not even be, well, Afroasiatic doesn't exist anyway, but now they're saying, well, there's been many scholars who argue that Chadic doesn't belong to Afroasiatic. And so I'm a cite this latest book in the last chapter where the guy, I'm just going to read it. Let me, in peace to Zugechi, who just joined us.
That's a Z.
Peace to the fam.
Peace,
Sean.
What's up, bro?
Man, just joining the discussion, man. I hear Asar breaking it down.
Yeah. I can let you speak for yourself since you was over there in no man's land.
Man, no man's land.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna let you give us the insight on that, but I want to read this first.
Go ahead.
Right. So there's the last chapter is chapter 12 of the book, Ancient Egyptian and Afroasiatic Rethinking Origins. Right. And so it's called in Pascal's and Boulé's and Boole's footsteps, measuring the mathematical probability of genetic kinship between language families, with a note on Chadic. Right. He says, I'm just skipping down on the page 321. So the third paragraph, he starts off, a subsidiary aim of the present contribution is making just one more attempt at putting to rest once and for all the hypothesis that there is any evidence at all that shows that Chadic is Afroasiatic. Strangely, everyone now seems to believe that there is such evidence, whereas up to about 40, 50 years ago, no one did. What happened? And then he goes on and on. So his part of his aim of this paper or this chapter is to debunk, according to him, once and for all, that Chadic is an Afroasiatic language. And I bring that up only because in the reply by one of the scholars who reviewed my journal article, they said, instead of comparing, for example, Egyptian and Bantu and Yoruba, you should have picked a Chadic language like Hausa. So now when I reply back and I cite this, I'm like, according to Afroasiatic scholars, Chadic is not even a part of Afroasiatic. So why would you suggest that I use that language that is unrelated, but then vilify me for using Bantu and Yoruba, which you claim is unrelated?
It sounds like just another way to dismiss you.
Exactly.
Stall. That's really what people are doing. They're stalling. You know what I mean? Because they know that they're gonna have to deal with this at some point. But the only thing they can really do is to ignore. But please go ahead.
No, I'm done. So you can tell us what was going on in your experience, your recent experience that Brother Sean was mentioning.
I was on the channel with some gentlemen, man, and it really comes back down to the same thing. People have this idea of people who study Egypt as if they're just making up fanciful claims and nothing that they're talking about has any validity whatsoever. But people can never point out an argument. People can never really stick to the topic when they get to talking about it. And it prompted me to ask the question, so do you think that African scholars are just sitting in whole Egyptology departments on the continent and in the black world and just twiddling their thumbs. And I even brought you up, Asar, you know, because I know some people like to call your name out sometimes and say, oh, you know, when they agree with you, Asar is the master teacher. But when they don't agree, then it becomes kind of pejorative. You feel me?
Yeah.
So, and then people want to turn around and that you're picking and choosing. But what's clear is that people cannot get around the arguments. Even when I was trying to break down to people, like I was trying to explain to people that I'm not even making a claim. I'm just saying, in ancient Egyptian and in Wolof, you find almost identical terms for immediate family members.
Yeah.
I can't make up the Wolof language, and I can't make up the ancient Egyptian language. And people's response is, well, you know, the Wolof they borrowed a lot of Arabic and blah 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 blah. And I'm trying to explain to people like, look, I can pull up my screen right now and show you these terms side by side with Hebrew, Arabic, and Berber, and you can see the apparent difference. And as a matter of fact, you will see very few, if at all any, correspondences to ancient Egyptian in those language on that particular level. You know, and that's something that you can't get around. You're gonna have to do something. Just saying that it doesn't exist and ignoring the data, to me, is just showing people's cognitive dissonance and the issue that they have with their own identity, maybe, you know what I mean, and with their own hang-ups about blackness and scholarship.
Yeah, that's what I was. I don't know if you were on the show a little earlier, but I was, you know, telling Brother Sean that, you know, we got to remember that when you're online and you're engaged in these conversations with a lot of folks, you're dealing with a lot of different issues all at the same time, which include, you know, self-identity issues, self-hate issues, mental health issues, on top of, you know, just character issues, and dealing with people's egos and the like, and then refusing, like I haven't figured out a term for it just yet, but I'm trying to figure out a good term that represents this idea that, you know, there's people who walk around in life that want to project that they are somebody somewhere, right? Like, and so they will go to the extremes to speak and make themselves appear as if they are knowledgeable in you know, on certain things, and they're not. And you could just tell by the quality of their conversation that they are not. You know,
right, I kept saying you can put these terms together, and people can repeat the same thing. But Wolof might be borrowing from like, bro, that does not answer the question in any way, shape, or form.
But as y'all know, and one of the things that I keep repeating myself and pushing on this channel in terms of knowing the historical comparative method and why it's important. We're not just talking about random lookalikes. So I don't know if you caught that part of the conversation when I was talking about the reviewers in their response to some comparisons in my tables. They were like, well, this sound doesn't match this sound. This sound in language A doesn't match this sound in language B, in which I'm comparing.
Absolutely irrelevant.
Matter of fact, what they don't understand, this is how I know that nobody who deals with historical comparative linguistics reviewed my article, because that's the strongest evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can't say that they were borrowing.
Mm-hmm.
If the words sound too similar to each other, for example, if you're dealing with ancient Egyptian and modern Wolof, you know, you can make these arguments that, well, it's possible that they could have borrowed it from either directly or indirectly by some intermediate language, right? Which would be kind of odd for basic family terms,
Right,
as you
right.
mentioned. but if I'm showing the pattern, the non-accidental pattern.
And I think that's what people are not getting when they see some of your work, Asar. They're not seeing that it's more than just, well, it's more than just letters, right?
Exactly.
These are values that, like genes, change on both sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're able to show is the consistent change in both sides of the equation, which cannot be hazard.
Exactly. It is,
you know, and I think people have a hard time getting that. And I think another thing is, and I kind of brought this up too, is that because even if people want to bring it back to a common parent in the Green Sahara, those linkages are still valuable. Who are these people to tell us that linkages, because they predate Kemet, are not valuable?
Exactly. And
you see what I'm saying? These terms are not just terms, they represent institutions, they represent culture facts that are still used today, you know. And
exactly,
you know, yeah.
Matter of fact, as I'm preparing for, let me see if I can find the flyer again. Where is, okay, come on. There we go. I'll be in Ohio for the Carter G. Woodson Committee presents an African market and lecture at Wings Academy at 10615 Lamontier Ave in Cleveland, Ohio. On the weekend is June 10th and 11th. On June 10th, I will be speaking that Saturday, and my conversation is titled "The Importance of Kemet to the Cultural Unity of Africa, Why Kevin Hart is Correct." And then on June 11th, there's going to be Dr. Timothy Owen Moore, who's going to be speaking on melanin and global elites, control and attack on humanity. That's a different conversation from mine. Just know that. But he'll be speaking on that on Sunday. So, but anyway, in preparing for this lecture, you know, one of the things that I'm listing is these I'm making this argument to demonstrate, for example, these West and Central African connections and why they're not arbitrary. So, you know, first and foremost, for example, like you see commonly across Africa the name of you see the leopard skin or cheetah skin aprons and the like in association with kings and priests, right? And you see it, of course, in ancient Egypt, but you don't see it anywhere else. Maybe say once you get into South America, because they had jaguars there, right? But a separate entity. So it's even if you disconnect it and say that they arose independently, you then have to question why, for example, in Chiluba Bantu, do we have the exact same word for cheetah and leopard in the language as in ancient Egyptian? And they wear the leopard and cheetah skins for their kingships and priesthoods there as well.
That's right.
And I can show by the regular sound meaning correspondences that eliminates chance. That's the purpose of the whole process, of that scientific process, to eliminate chance. So you can't make that argument that is simply alone or it's an accident, it's just coincidence, right? That's why we do that experimentation.
Right.
And so they don't, this is what I'm saying, like in order for me to have an intelligent conversation with a lot of our detractors, I would have to simultaneously teach them how to do historical comparative linguistics, for which they're not ready for because they have to learn regular linguistics. And then they have to learn semantics.
Right.
And then they have to learn about grammar and all this other kind of stuff before we can even get into the seriousness of historical comparative linguistics. So there are several fields that they're not even introduced to understand exactly what we're talking about and why it's important when you're showing those particular connections, because now at this point it's not about the information. It's their other self-hate and its agenda is working to try to make African scholars seem like they Rudy Poot, like they didn't go and graduate from the best colleges in the world.
Like that's really starting to bother me. Like at first, like I had some understanding because there are language barriers. There is a certain history, of African scholars struggling with certain concepts. I'll put it like that.
Uh-huh.
But that is kind of to be expected from a people who are 30, 40, 50 years removed from colonization and subjugation on many levels. But at some point, if people are engaging in this conversation for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they have yet to take any African scholar seriously or any European scholar seriously, that is showing these correlations between not only African and Egyptian, but not only modern African languages, but in Egyptian, but modern languages in Africa, period. How I'm not understanding how people are rationalizing that as okay in their brain.
Because they're not scholars. That's what I'm saying. It's like until you organize your thoughts and systematize your arguments and present them. See, they think that like we just be having conversations on YouTube. Like we don't be in academia presenting this information at conferences, submitting journal articles, having these debates, and all this other kind of stuff. That's the stuff that I'm engaged in. They're not. So they don't know how to put together an academic argument. They don't know what it means to deal with literature review, to know whether it's the state of the art, to have your work scrutinized by scholars and scholars you don't know. Like in this case, when you're submitting to an article, it's a double blind review. So I don't know and won't know the names of the people who reviewed it. Right? Like they're not willing to put themselves in harm's way, but they want to argue from the comfort and safety of their home on their cell phone, where there's no, where their name isn't put on the line, because you're presenting academic, like they have no intention of expanding and moving scholarship forward.
That's the part. That's really it when you think about it. People are very content and people are very happy with feeling as though they have the information. When the people who are actually in the field, see, there are different types of scholars. There are scholars who are reorganizing material that has already been published, and there are scholars who are actually on the ground. And even then, sometimes you have to be careful about how they're assessing certain items, certain things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not to say that they're not experts, but all of us come with a bias that we have to check. And if everybody was perfect, there would be no need for scholarship.
Exactly. Or at least peer review.
Right. So I think that people have to, I'm definitely getting more into it. I've been talking to some people who are in the field and trying to get myself more into it, officially, so I can present also some of my stuff and not just be somebody on YouTube. You know what I mean?
It's a totally different ball game. See, now keep in mind, somebody said earlier that I'm old, and I'm definitely reaching OG status. That's what all the young folks call me now. I'll be walking the street, my bad, OG, if they like bump into me. So I've come to the point. I have to realize that I'm up there at age now. So as I said, I'll be 44 in July.
Respect.
So not quite elder, but that's definitely beginning elder stage.
Respect.
So
in the Abrahamic traditions, that's the age of prophecy.
Basically, But saying all that, when I got into this, there's no YouTube. There's internet, but it's not. There's no term called social media, even though we had message boards back in the day. But my introduction into this is through academia, in academic circles. For example, when in 2002, my first formal article on the meaning of Kemet was published in 2002 and presented at an African Studies Symposium. Right? And so it's being critiqued by PhDs in that area. So that's where I come through. So I have a different level of understanding on what it means to present arguments, to make arguments, to deal with scholarship, to the importance of source material, the importance of critiquing source material, to being able to find the actual underlying arguments and to find the primary source material, and being able to do it's just a whole bunch. And a lot of folks, they didn't come through that process. Yeah. They came through YouTube.
And you can really tell, man. You can really tell. I mean, I always give y'all props, but I gotta give you and Wujawi y'all props, man. I know people saying a lot of stuff right now, but say me, for instance, dude, being from Senegal, I used to hate Kemetic wasn't even a thing, but I used to hate anything that even sounded like people were talking about Egypt. Because my thing was, your ancestors are them Negroes in Nigeria, in Senegal with me, with the dusty feet, you know what I'm saying? And in the street right now, that was my thing, And it wasn't until I started speaking with scholars who had worked with Cheikh Anta Diop and speaking with and reading the work for myself after I was confronted with things, people thinking I'm from Senegal, so I'm supposed to know about Cheikh Anta Diop, and I'm shooting people down and I haven't even read the work. So I really give y'all your props, because I'm happy that when I did come into this stuff, there were people like Asar Imhotep and people like Wujau who were doing this work on a serious level and putting it out there on a scholarly level. And ever since I've been speaking with scholars from Senegal. I've been speaking with scholars from the United States, and I haven't spoken to one scholar that has been like, yo, what the hell are you talking about? So I just want to put that out there. I don't know all of Asar's arguments, and I don't need to. But for the things that I have looked at, they're solid. And deserve to be critiqued from a scholarly perspective. And other thing too, with this whole Cleopatra thing, I don't fall for it.
Huh.
You know, we don't hold people accountable from other ethnic groups for what trolls on the internet say.
Yeah.
You know, if it's gonna be a scholarly conversation, it's gonna be a scholarly conversation. You know, but I don't know any scholars that are running around saying, you know, the Egyptians are all invaders at the top of their lungs. That's usually something you see on the internet chat group. You know, so
Yeah.
we've
Well, but see, that's
internalized a
part.
lot of this stuff, man. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, like, part of the larger discussion that isn't being had is like I talk with Dr. Shamarka Keita a lot, and one because we're working on some things together, and he's the elder, and he's always trying to school me on scholarship stuff. So he knew I was going to get rejected. he like your paper gonna get rejected. I'm like, I know, but I'm doing it for a purpose.
Right.
Anyway, so but what he does that's very, you don't see this too often, but only in the deepest of academic circles, is the scholarship and the tracing of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what Shamarka Keita will do is he'll go back to some of the oldest literature and read all of it coming back to current, and then process trends in larger arguments so that people can see where a lot of these arguments are originally coming from.
True.
And we don't tend to do that in the online internet YouTube community.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So but first and foremost, peace to Dr. Christopher Cager. Welcome to the program, and happy birthday to you, as Sister Monica stated. And but yeah, so when you're looking at, when they're trying to make these arguments, these are arguments that people like Ashra Kwesi, Anthony T. Browder, even to some extent like Dr. Ben on certain things, right? So they're critiquing these arguments, and then of course in the modern age, it's the Sarah Sutanseti, the Brother Polites, this,
right.
But in the earlier days, because Dr. Ben and Ashra Kwesi and Anthony T. Browder and other folks are kind of revered in our community. They were coming to college campuses and having these lectures and discourses, and a lot of these people were coming in and going back into their classrooms trying to make arguments with the professors. And this is what inspired the Mary Lefkowitz Not Out of Africa text.
That makes sense.
You get what I'm saying? And so if you can understand that pattern, the origin of these certain particular ideas, then you can have a more nuanced conversation and show that this is not a monolith, and where the limitations in the Ashra Kwesi, who doesn't appear to read and write Meta Nature, right? And same thing with Sarah Sutanseti and Polite and all these other kind of folks,
right?
And where to separate them from an Abu Bakr Musalam and
right.
an Oscar Bafuma, and a Theophilo Benga. There's different levels, to this. So what they're doing, the opposition is going to the weakest links and then trying to categorize any and every black person that speak about Egypt and make it seem like we're all Sarah Sutansetis and Brother Polites and young pharaohs making arguments.
Yeah, man, it's so disingenuous, man. And we as scholars, and as African scholars are supposed to, but we're supposed to be, held to the same to a higher standard of being able to recognize who the trolls are and who aren't.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. And when we see other African people adopt these attitudes when we know that they're not even standing on a real scientific foundation? It shows their bias, and it makes you wonder, what else is that they have internalized that is causing these kind of behaviors. You know what I mean? I know if I was a somebody who was interested in this topic, I would want to know what the other side was talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, we can only do so much, and I'm trying to do my part. And again, like I have so many book and research projects going on, some that I'm actually executing and some that's still just in my head, that like I can't fathom wasting all this time trying to argue with folks on YouTube.
I hear you, man.
Because it takes away from your concentration and a thing. So, part of doing scholarship is just knowing when to let folks just be, because you don't want to waste your time. But also I want to recommend, and I recommend it all the time, but it's a video by Dr. Asa Hilliard, and he's talking about the attack on Africans writing their own history. It's a lecture that he was doing for ASCAC, and that to me is like one of his most top tier lectures, and it provides you with some insight on the systematic and ongoing and very well funded attack on African scholarship, not just dealing with Kemet, just across the board.
Yeah.
And how there's whole institutes that have millions of dollars that are aimed at trying to silence African voices. And so you can go through his conversation and see the names of these institutes, and then like who they were attacking in that day. So I think he passed in 2007, 2008, something like that. So of course prior to that, and when I came into in right in high school, going into college, that was at the height of the Black Athena debates, right? And it was just and I when I look at it now, I see how serious the conversation was, but even then it was intense for what little I knew way back in 97, 98.
Yeah, this conversation is really, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because people hate hearing about Kemet, bro, but like people can't stop talking about it. And I think it's very fascinating because this discussion about Kemet revolves around these issues that are so at the heart of so many of the concerns of people right now in 2023, not just Black people, even, especially Black people. These ideas of what is Blackness, how far back does that stretch? What does an African state look like? What does a Black state look like? And I think a lot of these questions are very hard for people to actually envision. And then some people might even hear me say this and think I'm just, rambling, but really, like, I think people have a hard time envisioning a diverse Black, not only society, but power structure.
Yeah, and so it's important that not only, and I'm speaking specifically. Well, first I want to say that I see your message, brother Sean. Sean had the jet, but he might be back on if he's listening from the chat. But if we're still live, he may come back on, and anybody can jump on. The link is pinned to the top. But getting back to what I'm saying here, the reason, Egypt, the study of Egypt is important for many different reasons for many different scholars. And it's important to, again, to do the scholarship on the origins of ideas and methods and just the history of the field itself, so you can understand when certain arguments have entered the conversation and by who, and its impact on conversations even today, why, you know, this was going on, for example. So when a lot of African scholars are dealing with Kemet, they're not just simply dealing with Kemet. They're dealing with all of Africa, and they're trying to piece an accurate history of Africa in total, from the most ancient of ancient times for the evolution of human beings itself, all the way to recent times in the diaspora of Africa, the forced diaspora of Africans, right? Like, this is a care and concern for African researchers. And so Kemet becomes important, one, because of its longevity, two, because of its location is in Africa. So if you're studying African history, you have to include ancient Egypt.
Facts. The earliest trade records of almost all the neighboring African countries starts with Kemet.
Yep. And the writing, because they
So,
wrote and preserved.
How are people even imagining that African people would divorce themselves for Kemet, and to please who?
Exactly. But it's not, but here's a second layer to all of this. The writing is important because we don't have the living culture as it was in that area to this day. And as we understand it, the language is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that we have access to the minds of the ancient Egyptians is to study the texts and the records that they left. Now, this becomes important because a lot of other African cultures, the vast majority of them, did not have writing, did not have a writing system comparable to ancient Egypt in those comparable times. So in order for us to get access to the minds of these ancient Africans, we have to go a different route. That's why a lot of the African scholars also take courses in linguistics, because linguistics allows us to go back in time by comparing the languages and reconstructing the parent ancestor language, right? And as a result of that process, now we can start piecing and start making arguments for what is African and what is not. Because now, when you're looking at that, you know, we're comparing these things, these thoughts and ideas of African people, and then we just come and happen across ancient Egyptian records. We're like, wait a minute.
Right.
I have this same word in my language.
I'm telling you. No, like Asar.
Go ahead.
I don't even want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, the African scholars, when they were looking at the totality of Africa, and of course that would include ancient Egypt, they started noticing the similarities in thought, in praxis, in clothing, in rituals, in funeral and burial practices,
musical instruments.
Exactly. So they're like, wait a minute. How do they have the same thing that we have, and they call it the same thing that we call it? What's the deeper relationship here? So now it spawns a whole new conversation on the potential relationship between, for example, Wolof and ancient Egypt. Then you come across these oral traditions that were recorded in the early 1900s, talking about these 5 migrations from Egypt to Senegal. Wait a minute. Then you start finding these people, and matter of fact, I'm gonna see if I can find it because I'm including this in my lecture. I just need to. How do I get to my saved? And welcome to the program, Akoma the Jed. Just wanted to acknowledge you real quick.
Yeah, man. Bless up, man. Good night. Good night.
Peace on Coma.
All right.
You don't know. One thing just now when you're saying about Black Single agree with the time. It have a new reckoning at time. I want to introduce to the Black community. You know, where in the Nile Valley, we used to count time from the rising of the sun and then the setting of the sun. So right now it's really 4:15. If you understand what I'm saying, it's really 4:15 night time. You know what I mean?
No, I don't understand what you say.
You mean you don't understand what I'm saying? I said in ancient Egypt, right? We used to count time from when the sun rises as the first hour of the day. So what you have to do now, what you have to do is either add 6 or minus 6 from your clock to tell you the real time how the ancient Nile Valley people would have reckoned it now. So what we just call 6 a.m. that's really like 0. So 7 a.m. is like the first, that is 1. You know what I mean? And like what we call 12 is really the 6th hour of the day. 12 noon when the sun in the middle of the sky is the 6th hour of the sun. And so they used to go and thing, you know.
I see.
But then, and in the next realms too, from the different perspectives, like I just more see the living mind of the ancient Nile Valley people in the Ethiopian culture, but like you just take it from a more.
You still there?
Yeah, you hearing me? You hear me good? Yo.
You still here, Jet?
Yeah. Well,
you had went out.
Now I was telling you
have
now.
To repeat what you just said.
I was saying how I was telling you how I just see the Nile Valley mind and the Nile Valley culture still living in the Ethiopian culture, just with like Christianity kind of overlap on top of it. You know what I mean? But you, from your perspective, is more bring a kind like the Bantu link, that kind of link there. But to me, that come like it's almost more further aflung to find certain cultural similarities and correlations than looking right there close by the Ethiopian kingdom. Yeah.
Because I was just having a conversation that kind of ties into this. And we were talking about the differences between the cultural and geological differences between East Africa and West Africa, right? So in East Africa, you do have this Blue Nile situation, right? But East Africa is a lot more spread out and geologically freer in a certain sense than West Africa. West Africa seems like it's a lot more dense. And you have those rivers there, those river systems that I'm finding out used to be connected. Even the Senegal had a tributary that ran into the Niger River.
Yeah.
So you had a different dynamic there of societies and probably state formation as well. And I don't think that's so much to do with Kemet, because both sides of Africa and Central Africa have these myths and these legends that hail them from either Egypt or the north or the east,
Mhm.
the Sudano-Egyptian region.
Now the way that this video, I think somebody like uploaded this from a cell phone, so I don't think you can really see. So I mentioned earlier, like this is the Talensi people in Ghana, right? So you remember Brother Aziz, and well, I'm assuming it's in several works, but I know in his PhD dissertation and in one of his other works, he shows the staves, the wasp scepters, in Senegal, in Ghana, and in ancient Egypt.
Yep.
So this is one of the groups in Ghana that that has. So I don't know if y'all can really see it when they do it, but it's a particular type of dance that they do. Let me. They had these bells on their feet.
They're doing that stomp.
You see? Hold on.
It's kind of blurry.
I'm trying to pause it right, because you can see one of the wasp scepters right there. You see, you could barely see it. It's the wasp scepter that they're holding here.
I think I saw kind of like one with like a head.
Dang it. Well, anyway, I don't know why it's because this is a Facebook. They're not really good for streaming video, but and then I'm on this kind of old laptop, so I do apologize. But this video I'm showing here is you see this dance that they're doing. They're stomping their right feet, and on their right foot they have these kind of bells that you can hear the almost tambourine-ish in terms of the sound, and they're holding these wasp scepters. I'm gonna mute the sound and see and just play it, so hopefully it plays. But in the comments, so there's one of the wasp scepters that you see right here, right? And you can also see, of course, the
cow tail, the
cow, right? So they're holding these scepters here, and there's one that you'll see that looks just is a mirror image of the Seth image of the Seth what's the name? And it was probably more right there, him, darn it,
with the glasses on.
No, it's right before him. So I'm gonna go back. It's gonna be wooden. All right. So he should be coming up.
Look right there. Also.
Hey.
Dang it.
It's
skipped because it's right. Well, that's one, but it's dang it. See, this thing keeps skipping. Like it's a choppy. Right there. Dang.
Whoa! Snap.
You saw it, right?
Oh snap! I did just see that joint. Hold on.
See if I can play it again. There we go. Yeah, darn it!
I saw
that.
But
you saw it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is it's called a wasp scepter in ancient Egypt, right? And in the comments, they're not even commenting about ancient Egypt. In the comments of this video, and I screenshotted it, I'm gonna put it in my presentation. One of the commenters saying, like, wait a minute, this looks exactly like the dance that the Nuba people do in Sudan,
Oh man.
and they have the same sticks. This is Ghana right here, and so there's and under that comment, there's a sister who came in and said, I was just about to say the same thing. So I found that very interesting. So I went looking.
Go look for it.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I say go look for it.
All right, hold on. I'm about to, I think it's not the exact dance, but hold on. I'm going to.
No, Asta, I is a Ethiopia centric kind of fella, you know what I mean? And I went and visit over there in 2010, and similar to that same ritual we're now showing we there in Ethiopia in Lalibela, the priest and them is carry a staff with a kind of top look. This is similar to that, and they have a timbrel thing doing a certain circular dance with it with a similar timbrel sound,
See, this is why I wish I was on my other computer, so like this stuff would act right. I found a similar, so you can still see the same cowhides and tails that the sisters are holding here, and you can see the same type of sticks. You see it right here that the person is holding. And there's another dance. They do the same dance with it's the bells on the right foot. They're not doing it here, but these are you see this on the title, Sudanese Nuba Mountains, right? Mm-hmm. They're holding the same type of staves, slightly different, colorations, with the same type of staff. And in other videos that I have, you'll see some of them more clearly in the Seth animal and the like. Right.
And see,
so how does this stuff that you find in ancient Egypt, of course, we can see in Sudan. Well, this stuff comes from Sudan in the first place, which I'll show in the presentation. But how does it get to Ghana?
Right.
That they're doing the same dances and have the same staffs.
Right.
Like it's stuff like this that.
Go ahead, my bad.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, so when you hear about these oral traditions of people in Ghana talking about they come from the Nile, we have culture facts to back them up. Because there was no Egyptologist that said, you know what? The ancient Egyptians had these wasp scepters. Y'all should have them too.
Right.
Let's introduce it. They weren't introduced by no white people. This is part of the culture.
And some things you can't argue. You can't argue. Just come from, 10,000 years ago. Because some of these things are gonna have markers. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's the other thing I wanted to bring on because like whether this is from post Green Sahara or during the dynastic period, this is an extremely valuable culture fact that is shared by Africans from east to west, as you've just demonstrated, and that's invaluable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not just because of Kemet, you know what I'm saying? And I think that people really have to digest that.
Exactly. So it's
just pointed out, in the although you do kind of have to be a little bit careful. I hate to say it, but you have to be a little bit careful because the Arabs and the Yemenis have a lot of circular dances, kind of like that, with weapons. But once
they're not walking around with Seth animals on it, and that's when you go to, because I'm gonna show the Saharan artwork, right? That shows these items, not only in the Sahara artwork, but of course in Upper Egypt in pre-dynastic times, and then of course you see these in Sudan in present day, and in Ghana, and as far as Senegal. But you also see these same sticks in Ethiopia, amongst the Oromo people and some other groups. So it's like it's widespread, and this is what I'm talking about. Is when I'm making the arguments, I'm using by analogy a principle that we find in biology when they're trying to figure out what is the origin of a particular type of a particular species, right? And so it's a rule of thumb that they call the principle of greatest diversity and least moves. Meaning, if we find different kinds of the same fundamental species more concentrated in one given area, but there's not much diversity the farther out we go where we see that species, where the most diversity is, and they have not moved far, that's the origin. That's more than likely where the origin of that species is. It's somewhere in that area. This is how we can tell that Homo sapiens originate in Africa, because in Africa you have the most diverse type of human beings on the planet, but that diversity becomes thinner and thinner the wider you get out. You know, when you start going into China and going into Europe and the Native Americans, and of course this is talking about before, you know, ships and planes, and we just started having sex with everybody around the world and didn't give a damn, right? But so when we're looking at these characteristics, so we can argue one of many hypotheses. Either these are all coincidence, that in Senegal, Ghana, Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, you know, and Kenya, that these wasp staffs exist by happenstance. They independently created these staffs, right? Or two, they all were borrowed from ancient Egypt, or ancient Egypt borrowed it from some other groups, one of those groups, or, you know, there was a central place in which this particular craft and idea was concentrated, and then for some reason they spread and dispersed at some particular early time, and it just became a mainstay in these modern eras.
Right. And that's the thing that be killing me, because people will see you make a connection. They won't even know if you're making a connection with something that you know is a marker or not. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
They'll say, oh, that's from 10,000 years ago. And to them, they said something that kills the argument. But you know, they don't understand.
There's a whole bunch of work.
Right. They don't understand that people who are doing this are actually looking at things that not only show the similarities, but also show the divergences, show the evolution of certain culture facts. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's much deeper than just saying, oh, this is just because it's from a common parent. And you know, some things in the same region could be from a common parent and from diffusion, you know, but you're gonna have to know what the term is for that item. You're gonna know what the rights are behind that item. You're gonna have to know what ethnic group is responsible, or what subgroup in that ethnic group is responsible for the handling of those items, for the history of those items. Like West Africa is complex, man. It has a lot of different. Actually, all of Africa is complex and operates in context. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sir, I wanted to show something, but I'm not seeing no option to share screen or whatever. So I want to know if you could pull it up for me.
You should. Are you on a phone, or are you like on a PC?
On a phone right now.
You should. Now, I've only been on the phone version.
Well, it's a simple thing, but illustrating exactly what you was now showing too now. type in on YouTube Ethiopian Orthodox chants and look from a video from a channel named Potty88.
Ethiopia. I'm sorry, hold on.
Ethiopian
Ethiopia.
Orthodox, with Ethiopian with an N on the end, right? Orthodox chants.
Okay.
And you see a channel named Potty88. Pottie88.
Uncle, you ever looked at the tradition of the people who do the ankhs on their forehead?
Which part is that?
Ethiopia and Eritrea. And
I see
the cops used to put it on their wrist.
I know that, and I see people with crosses marking their forehead.
Right. They say that some people associated with the Russian with like a early Orthodox cross, but they were talking about the ankh, and that idea of looping is still alive in the Ethiopian cross tradition.
Well, it have
Hold on 1 second. What's the name of the person again? Because I don't see.
Pottie 88 is the name of the channel. We'll have the video up.
Pottie. Yeah, it's not. And I'm scrolling.
Pottie 88.
Let me just put that in. Pottie 88.
On the channel.
There we go.
And this share the video named Ethiopian Orthodox chants.
Let me see. Share my screen. Yeah. What's that?
So you see they still have the stylized kind of wax stuff too, and the same timbrel something to got the same kind of artifact.
Yeah, I was about to say this looks like an instrument that you find in ancient Egypt. That the brother is
instrument. That is one of them same cultural things. In Ethiopia, there's always work with that as a timbrel thing that is used for the prayers and whatnot now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like this is the stuff. See, this is going to be volume 4 of my race and identity. Because like to my knowledge, there's no book that really systematically connects these things in the different regions.
This is a video I take personally for myself in Ethiopia too. Back in 2010, I taped this in Lalibela.
All right, appreciate it. This again, I wish I was on my other computer because this is I'm on this. What is this? A Chromebook, and it sucks as a computer. But this is what I have in my car, and I'm still in my car because I'm far away from home. But yeah, I mean, it's so much stuff that it would take us weeks to go through. That's why you got to write books, to kind of go through these things, and so that people get a good sense of you know, these kinds of connections and why it's important. Now, I mentioned earlier that, you know, different scholars have different reasons for why they're making these reporting these things. Some is just purely academic and some is political. For example, Sheikh Anta Diop was doing this for political reasons, you know, and so he was pushing the United States of Africa, and he was trying to demonstrate to the people on the ground that at one time in history you were all the same people, that you share the same culture even to this day.
Yep.
And you know what you're calling this is what we call it in our language, and we're connected in this way. So if you understand that we are all relatives, this should make it easier for us to integrate and develop these United States of Africa.
I just had a perfect example of what you're talking about. I had a brother from Senegal that came over to the house, and he was telling me about how he met a brother from I think it was Ghana. He said Ghana. It was either Ghana or Ivory Coast. Either way, it's the Khan and the Baule. And you know, he told me that they had a great conversation, but at first it was really awkward because he mentioned that they both got to a point where they realized that they don't know anything about one another. He was Christian, the dude from Ghana was Christian, the dude from Senegal was Muslim. So automatically right there, they're telling each other to themselves that they have nothing in common. Right? And what Ghana speaks English, Senegal speaks French. That's another thing they don't have in common, right? And you know, the dude from Senegal was telling me how, like, yeah, you know, we didn't really have anything in common, but you know, we had a nice chat. But me doing this research, I know about so many cultural similarities between the Akan and the Wolof. You know, from the Kra and Kanga, you know, from the Abosom and the Rap spirits, how they view paternal spirits with the Ntoro and the Tur, you know, these different ideas about naming, you know, about genealogy, about land ownership rights. You know, these are things that people on the continent are not coming up learning at all. You know, in any capacity. And the push is not for that to happen. Trust. You know.
I know, but and it's systematic. Like there's as I was going to mention earlier, besides the study of just simply history and ancient Egypt and religion and ancient empires, you also have to take on the field of African psychology, the study of African psychology. Like when you're looking at the works of Dr. Assia Hillard and especially Dr. Amos Wilson, for example, right? So that you understand the political nature of psychology and the different instruments that those in power use to weaken African people and the African continent for their own political and power hungry gains, I mean. Right? Without that conversation, without that study, they won't know why there's such an effort. Like I hear stories about people coming from the continent and white people telling them not to deal with African Americans.
Crazy.
And the same thing with people from the Caribbean and Jamaica.
Yep.
There's video of them saying when they came to the United States, that the white people was telling them not to link up with the African Americans. Why? Because the African Americans, you know, we brought on this thing called Pan-Africanism, and you know, we fighting for equal rights, and you know, we're seeing all black people and Africans as the same, and linking up for a greater power, you know, unit and the like. And so what they were trying to do, since African Americans are fighting for equal rights in the 50s and the 60s, they want to bring in, for example, the people out in the Caribbean as cheaper labor. And so if they keep the people, for example, the Africans coming in, and the African continental Africans and the Africans coming in from the Caribbean, from African Americans, then they won't be influenced by our incessant need to be free and to have equal rights and standing in this country. We can get all the labor from these folks for a lot lesser price.
That's right.
Well, I would chime in with a slightly different perspective as a Caribbean person, because majority of the people who is leave the Caribbean to go to America, it might be people that trying to be upwardly mobile in the socio-economic situation, right? And then the mass media now, they portray the Black Americans on a whole in a kind of degenerate kind of form and certain things like that. So naturally, these same immigrant people who coming across there now, they would try to probably circumscribe themselves away from the Black community to not get that same kind of pejorative, tarnish kind of thing on themselves too, then, if you understand what I mean. But it's a factor, same white supremacy, because they might know the good features and characteristics and thing of the Black community in America, because mostly is a negative images get portrayed outside of America of the Blacks who in America now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think all of that is at play, and I think that I know what I'm getting ready to do, and what I'm encouraging others to do is to start participating and put in action ahead of time, since we know these problems, right? Because I've seen so many videos of people coming to the United States, and you know, we don't address the fact that they're getting conditioned before they come to contact with their cousins and brothers on the U.S. soil. And on the flip side, the U.S. is such an isolating force that many African Americans go abroad, not necessarily just to Africa, but go there without even thinking to learn the language. And that shows you a certain level of being isolated psychologically, because the U.S. doesn't necessarily want you to be out there traveling like that. You know what I'm saying?
It have another factor too. It have a next factor, right? Where it have something called American exceptionalism. In a way, America and a whole have a culture.
Let me hold that real quick, Jen. I just want to finish with this one thing before I forget. And that's that we have to start intersecting these kinds of things. All of these problems are actually opportunities, and we can set up consulting groups who specialize in what attitudes and behaviors and habits will keep one safe and within the cultural paradigm that we're talking about right now, whether on either side of the Atlantic that you're going. You see what I'm saying? So I think that will be a good project that could eventually be lucrative, but I think it's definitely necessary, because we can't expect for things to get better. They likely are not going to. You know what I'm saying? But that's just what I wanted to throw in there.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Brother
I was just saying it have various little things that does create friction in between the communities. Another one of them what I kind of identify is the kind of notion of American exceptionalism. So even sometimes the blacks from the North American continent is actually think like somehow by nature them being in America they smarter or superior to the Caribbean blacks and the African blacks now. Like, but it's true a kind of epistemology of being closer to the white man a kind of way, you know, is a matrix, you know. I know following
But I
it what
think that goes to what I was saying earlier, that we have to, I guess at the crux of it all is that we have to have a collective and shared socialization and educational process that includes the psychological literature that demonstrates the tactics and the strategies and possible ways that they will evolve in the future in terms of how they divide and use these particular strategies to heavily, of course, influence the thought and values of African people in these various areas. So when you're coming to this, you know exactly how it has affected our people. So we're not surprised when we come across somebody from the Caribbean or somebody who in the United States who's a descendant of Africa who holds these values and attitudes. We know how to deal with them. That's part of our curriculum. And so we already have strategies, language, talking points in place when we have those conversations. But because we do not have a lot of us just aren't educated in our own history and culture and events in these various places. Now, I was lucky because, when I went to college, I had African American studies and African studies as a minor. Right? We had those courses. So, of course, we had to read the stuff of Garvey and Walter Rodney and others out of the Caribbean. We had to learn about the Haitian Revolution and then Boukman and we know about Stephen Biko and apartheid, of course, Sheikh Anta Diop and Lubinga and so we're introduced in Africana Studies courses to all of this history from from England to Brazil. So we have a world consciousness. So I'm not surprised at all when I come in and see these different attitudes and stuff. I know the conditions. I know what the issues are, and know how to work around them. And so what we gotta get to the point where we're not looking at everyone as a monolith, and to understand that we're going to have to employ different strategies for different types of African people with different type of histories and different levels of education.
I really think that's where it's at, man. And I think a lot of opportunity is going to come out of that, because Africans have a lot to offer to one another, but there haven't been many successful structural institutions that facilitate the exchange amongst Africans, not only monetarily, but culturally, even a space where people, a library or a space where people can just, congregate and for the purposes that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. But that's why you have to have channels like this that utilize the technology to be able to have these conversations. So on the phone right now, or on the live right now, you have somebody from the Caribbean, you have somebody from Senegal, and you have a brother from Louisiana, Texas, West Philly represent, having this conversation right now, right? And we're sharing, we're dialoguing, we're thinking of strategies in the back of our head, and how we can, kind of implement some things. And you can only do that in an environment where it's not constant debate and chaos, where people are trying to get views based on controversy and unable to provide solutions or even to penetrate to the core of certain problems, because they're trying to one up each other instead of listening to one another and seeing how we can benefit each other and benefit our families and benefit our people by sharing and exchanging, information and resources with each other.
Yeah, man. No, just a little side note. You see the talk we're coming with about the reckoning at the time. You ever come across that information in your studies, Brother Asa or Zugichi?
Not necessarily.
Nah. Yeah, it would. I know, like, the sun is visible to everyone on Earth, so it's the basis of time for everyone on Earth. So there's going to be some similarity in how they approach and utilize the sun. But what I'm interested in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is, for example, is there a common way in which the sun is used in African societies in terms of analysis of time and space altogether, reincarnation? Like, I see commonalities in Bantu Congo and ancient Egypt in how they utilize or view the sun. And how it's included in initiatory practices, right? Or somebody else could be looking at it from the standpoint, like with the Napa Playa stone setup, right? Like, how are they using the sun to detect time by, measuring the sun, how it rises and sets on these little calendar devices of stone in relationship to, for example, the detecting the rainy season. And for those who are cattle herders, when it's time to migrate. And for those who are farmers, when is it time to plant and harvest? And what do they call that process? Are there similarities, differences? That's kind of what, I'll be looking at. And when I'm and this is just a personal thing for me. Yeah. In my research, when I'm looking for similarities, I'm looking for exactitudes.
Because I have it real down pack, I trace it. You see, it have something in Christianity called the canonical hours. You ever heard of this or whatever? It's like, is a schedule or when it is say prayers, the canonical hours.
Yeah, but see, that's going to be something that's common throughout the world, and this is what I'm talking about. So, for example, let's just say that we just randomly select 10 to 20 cultures around the world, and we find that, like, out of that 20, 10 of them have these kind of canonical hours or whatnot, where they're set for prayers and things of that nature. That would be what we would call in linguistics a typological correspondence, meaning that there's similarities, just independent kind of human characteristics that you find in many cultures around the world. It is interesting, but it's not substantial enough to make scientific concrete connections between groups. Now, say for example, and I'm just going to pick a random group. So say for example that in ancient Egypt, they have a particular calendar system and set for in a series of prayers, and at the same time, and then I find a similarity in Ghana amongst the Akan people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they call it the same thing. They have the same word. They call it the same thing in this area. That's something that is more concrete. And
Well,
so now
we have this.
I'm sorry.
We have this in the we have the same exact correlation in the calendar system, the 13-month system where it have from ancient Kemet, and it have the 13-month system in modern day Ethiopia now, and the same months divisions and the same exact days and things like that, you know. It just happened.
But that can be argued because of this close proximity. Like
no, but it's not the proximity. The former Christianity what they have in Ethiopia is really Coptic Christianity, because there's a daughter church of the Alexandria Coptic Church now. But the Coptic,
that's what I'm saying. Like
it's tensions.
When it comes to something like that, because Ethiopia, you know, it's a couple of days, you know, a river ride, or in the Red Sea ride between like Egypt and Ethiopia, right? They used to make that trek all the time. So if there's similarities between the ancient Egyptian and those folks, a scholar can argue, well, they've been interacting with each other for a number of years, so they're bound to kind of share practices. So while it's interesting, it wouldn't be necessarily useful to make more historical connections. For example, if we was to find the same practice between the ancient Egyptians and the Akan in Ghana, because they are separated by a great distance. And so you, outside of migrations or interactions between them, like there has to be another explanation for this. And so this is what I'm saying in terms of the kinds of research that I do. I'm looking for the difficult connections to make that can only be made as a result of not chance. That is not, it's not a result of because we're neighbors, and you know my daughter married Joe's son, and now they had a family and they passed on traditions that we independently had in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our country or whatnot, and passed it on to the children. We're neighbors. That's the kind of stuff that you would expect. But if I'm finding the same practices 2,000 miles away, that's something different. And that's all I'm saying. It's when you're able to make those kind of more concrete, like with the Seth animal styles that Brother Aziz and I just saw on the videos that were shown. That is something that would be equivalent to, like, if you was to go in the Namibia desert and you see the Khoisan with a Transformer Autobots t-shirt on, and then trying to argue that they independently came up with the Autobots logo on a t-shirt. It's like, no, something else happened. Somebody from the United States, because they don't have motor vehicles. So what was the inspiration for robots for them? Like something else would have to be going on. And so that's kind of the same situation we're seeing with a lot of these culture facts and artifacts and concepts between West Africa and ancient Egypt. Something else is going on. It's not coincidence.
And that's what's so interesting to me about that period really between let's say the New Kingdom and early West Africa, and that period in the Sahara and all of that. A lot of people try to talk like they know they got the end all be all knowledge of what was going on in the Sahara.
No artifacts whatsoever. Everything buried under 2-mile high dunes of sand. And they want to. I keep telling folks, y'all don't know what the hell who was in the damn Sahara. How do y'all just conclude that everything just happened because they all integrated and dispersed from the Sahara. They
Last time
could
I
have
checked, I
dispersed
think
from
the
the Sudan.
Sahara is expanding at 3 miles every. Damn, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's something that's actually non-negligibly rapid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so much rock art that we could bring up and traditions that are in between Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, which are people who are called sub-Saharan Africans today, and Berbers who talk about sub-Saharan Africans, moving around in the region, them living with them in certain regions. You know what I mean? So like people don't know what the hell they talk about. You know what I mean? And if they do know what they're talking about, they know about what they know. You don't know about what you don't know. So
But they don't know nothing. That's what I be trying to say. Like people be sitting here trying to argue with me that they're able to correlate what languages people spoke by the presence of certain genetic markers. There is no genetic marker that codes what language or languages that whatever that person in which the DNA was extracted from spoke.
Yep.
That's why you don't know what languages they were speaking in the Sahara. Most of them languages that were spoken from those folks could have died off with the people in the Sahara.
Yeah.
Languages go extinct, and folks who
just how all those cultural practices went extinct because the Berbers, and Berber is not Berber nor Amazigh is a race, nor a defined ethnic group. You know what I'm saying?
What's interesting is I have a source from the late 1800s that was describing black people in Africa, and it included Egyptians and Berbers and the Sudanese folks as blacks.
Yep.
But you look at Berbers now, that's what I'm talking about. Like people today aren't necessarily people who were from the past in these particular areas. Like there's just so much that you have to learn about archaeology. Like there's a difference between an actual ethnic group in culture and an archaeological culture.
The facts.
An archaeological culture is just simply, based upon the remains that is on the ground. But that tells you nothing.
That could have been several ethnic groups.
Exactly. Like there was what's interesting is, and I couldn't tell you what group it was. This was long ago, and I wish I'd have just wrote it down. I used to work at this grocery store in Concordville called Wegmans. For those of y'all not on the East Coast that haven't been to a Wegmans, right? And I used to work this overnight shift in the warehouse, and like there was these two guys from Senegal and Senegambia that were from the same ethnic group, but they spoke different languages.
That's a fact.
they didn't understand each other, but they were the same ethnic group.
Yeah. Hey, and Assad, that's what's so interesting about this thing with the immediate family members, because there's this thing where Egyptologists are like, why is the word for brother the same word for husband, the same word for son, the same? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people cannot fathom what it's like to have a ambilinear system.
Exactly.
You see, when you tap into how these ancient Africans lived, with these matrilineal systems, a lot of things become more clear, and man, this wild.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how long we've been on. It's going on 4 hours now, and we can keep this up all night. I know some of y'all got to go to work in the morning. Some of y'all off because of Memorial Day. and but I do appreciate each and every one of y'all for listening and sharing, and for your questions. I know some I just didn't know the answer to, and those that I did provide answers for, I hope they were satisfying or led you, in a particular direction that you can get more answers. And thanks to everyone who came on the panel, Brother Ankoma, Dejed, and Brother Zugichi, Brother Aziz, and Brother Sean P, who was on earlier. And, lastly, again, just want to remind everyone that the book Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards a Meaning for the Place Name Kemet, is on pre-sale now. And you can go to the website, not that one. I'm sorry. Here we go. AsarImhotep.com. And when you go to check out, it's going to say $40. But, until the end of May, you can get it for $25. And in order to get the discount, you're going to have to type in the word Mbongi, which is the name of this show. And that's the word right there at the top right corner, Mbongi. So you can type that in the coupon area. Is going to say, coupon code when you get to the part of the payment process where it's going to ask you, what payment way, that you're going to use. But you can only use one, and that's PayPal. And you're allowed to use your debit or credit card with that. So when you get to that stage, you just type in Mbongi, and it's going to take off $15. So it's going to be $25. And you will be emailed to the email address that you use during the payment process. A sample chapter is one of the appendices. It's Appendix E of the text, and it kind of holds you off. And then your books will be mailed in August 22nd, and so I look forward to your feedback, and thank you all to those who have supported thus far, and those who intend to support in the future. And so, any closing words from any one of y'all before we go?
And just peace to the fam, and thank you for having me on, and great discussion as usual. Keep up the great work. Ever forward, never backward,
Indeed.
Yeah, man, I'd like to say Uncle Just and to everybody, or if we say Ang Dread Was, bless up to the family and thing, respect. This brother Zugichi, I like he information and the temperance and thing, so respect Zugichi same way,
Peace, brother. Peace, brother. Big respect to you as well.
Yeah,
indeed. Well, I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Y'all have a good night, and I will see you next time. Peace.
Yeah.